Oh my God, y'all saw that, right? Oh, I'm dead.
Fucking shotguns. I really want to hurt people who use shotguns. La, 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 la. Can't do it. I can't abide it.
Oh my god. But it is nice finally being on Windows 10 across all my platforms. So I don't have to like shift my brain back and forth between Windows 7 Enterprise and Windows 10. Though admittedly Windows 10 has its own issues. I get to run through all the updates again. Every time I open every time I open something, it's like, you need to install this. I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god. Fine.
La, 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 la.
Okay.
Beard, how was your day?
It was alright. It started a little late because I'm still fighting this little remnants of this migraine from Sunday.
Yeah.
But I am 5 entries from being done entirely with everything. I'm on Who Guards the Guardians.
Oh, that's a good one. Pins, I want to say, well, my home computer, obviously, I have home. But I'm pretty sure we're on 10 Pro at the office. I'd be surprised if we weren't, to be honest. I know we're on an enterprise version, if nothing else. So I'm assuming that's Pro. Oh my god. But yes, it has been a long day.
Yeah.
It has been a Monday.
I get that.
Oh. Give me 1 second.
You're good.
The outline anyway.
I'm just grinding Crucible, trying to reset rank again.
I'm getting close to finally being able to reset my Gambit rank.
Oh yeah? I wasn't even trying to go through that. I mean, I could, but I really don't want to, not without a team, because it's kind of stupid. Like, I really rage at blueberries when I try to play by myself.
Everybody hates Gambit, and I love it.
Oh, I love the game mode. I just don't want to play it with people who I can't talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody cues into the voice chat. I wish they did.
What's up?
Oh, talking about Gambit. All right. Yeah, I like Gambit a lot because I like slaying, and that's what my job ends up being half the time, is just slaying all the like Cabal or Vex or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else picks up moats. Somebody else invades and clears blockers. Yeah, that's what I like to do. And then I melt the boss at the end because I run Arc Strider in it. I do have Sleeper. I've yet to use Sleeper in Gambit though.
Oh my. It's something else.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm one of those guys that are on bygones. Like Kello's shotgun and sleep cover.
I haven't found a bygones I like yet. The roll I
Mine
got.
has
crappy.
opening shot and outlaw,
Ooh,
so it doesn't move.
that would be nice.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, right now there's nothing wrong with running sleeper. I'm glad they modified the headshot acquisition, the targeting acquisition on sleeper a little bit to make it a little bit more challenging. Because it was pretty ridiculous.
Trouble is, sleeper in PvP or Crucible is still going to be a body shot and you're dead.
Right. But any like Telesto's that way right now too. And I actually rage more about Telesto than I do sleeper in PvP.
Well,
But
it's only if they can nail everything on it, but that goes with like every fusion rifle at this point. I used my Techion's Force in or Techion. I gotta get used to
Techion.
saying it the right way at this point.
Mhm.
But I used that in Crucible, and it has backup plans on it.
Ooh.
So whenever I switch to it and shoot it, they're dead. They have it hits hard enough to kill them off.
The thing about Telesto right now that is really annoying to me is the fact that Telesto has no drop off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure most other fusion rifles have a little bit of a drop off.
They don't have drop off. They have stability issues at range.
That's
so
what
they're
it
like
is.
one of the few weapon types I think within Destiny that are affected in the way that they should be at ranged instances. But the further that they're out, just the less cluster that you have. They're better at like anywhere from 5 to 10 feet away. They're like just out of shotgun range area. That's where they're best.
Yeah.
Unless you're running a linear, in which case nobody cares. Start
Oh my
firing.
gosh. Look at Z's. Z's got a frickin' the Marasenna book printed out so she can review it with us.
Did she say that in...
She just tagged us on Twitter.
Oh.
That's adorable.
Doobie-doobie-doo.
That makes me so happy, Z. You have no idea.
Oh, you goofball.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Aw,
Mr.
yeah. Mr. Shay.
All right.
Shay and I were running some Crucible earlier. Not doing too shady either. I got two.
Shady. Like Shay.
Yeah. I actually got what is it freaking called? I got one of the triumphs done tonight that requires you to do 2 headshots with a sniper without reloading. I finally got it. And I was like, yep, I'm peeking. That's it. I'm done. I've peaked. No. It made me super happy. Shay was in the match with me. Oh. Oh gosh.
So, Blue,
Mm-hmm.
when you say Who Guards the Guardians was good, you failed to mention it was tragic.
Yeah.
To be
It is
fair,
that.
that's kind of all of them. I mean, in some fashion.
It really is. I did read Pulled Pork again. I still am of the opinion that it is our guardian. I need a little bit more time to understand it.
Oh god.
However, I was also thinking back on what else Ghosted scanned, and I thought back to the capsule in the colony ship,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, that's metal. That just happens to be holding something.
Just it just
Great.
happens to be holding something. I'm like, it's like I know like one of the well, yeah, Dino just said that one of the writers did confirm that pulled pork is still out there.
Thank
Okay.
God.
But I'm like, there's a lot of hit people with the headcanon that no, it explains so much. If
Well,
it
It is
was the
amazing.
case.
the other thing I was thinking though, just with the call out of the ideas of it being like the greatest guardian or something similar to that idea. I was also thinking about Saint 14 and
Yeah,
how we
I
know that
wondered.
he needs to return. And it would, knowing what we kind of know about how ghosts kind of like the Sigurd and Ophiuchus conversation, how they
Mhm.
kind of like offset each other. I thought that was kind of cute because we know Saint 14 is kind of a hard ass. Pulled pork would be a goofy ass. So it would actually make a lot of sense that they were together. In addition, that shell, I'm betting it's the Lotus shell,
Yeah, I think
which,
they
if that's the.
didn't they call it out? Or did they oh they just said it was a new reef shell.
Well, they said it was a reef purple shell. So they didn't say it was a reef shell, but they also have it as a flower that's on there. So the only
Mm.
one I can really think of would be the Lotus shell that we've at least seen. It could be something completely different, obviously. Um, but that would also be one of Saint 14's signature callings is that color. Like he pretty well had that on his armor adorned throughout the comics. And if not that, then at least the helmet of Saint 14 is pretty well adorned with it as well.
Oh my gosh. That is true.
Even the Ghost Theater, Community Theater Presents is kind of a tragic card just because it's so bad.
I
It's so
mean,
bad.
it's tragic in the fact that Dee Dee just doesn't understand how to write. But
I mean,
Listen,
Dee Dee's
we're gonna
writing what
talk
she
about
wants to write.
this.
yeah, really. I like how both Tyra and Tyra's ghosts chime in on those entries. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
I just isn't it Tyra's ghost that's like he like leaves and then he comes back and he's like, actually hang
Yeah.
on, we're gonna learn about narration.
We're gonna talk about this right now.
Oh my
The
God.
Shax one I thought though was hilarious because it's like
But why is it so
Shax is just,
sexually charged?
but he's still like trying to be nice about it. Besides, and I'm like, Shax, you've got a nice bone in your body.
But goodness.
I didn't even go there, Green. That was awful.
Blue went there first. Not my fault. Not my fault.
Y'all suck.
Blue went there first.
Why am I on this show?
Because you love me.
I suppose.
I found a shader I like on this. Too bad I don't have enough of it to make everything else mad.
And go through your things, the flare in your collections, and grab more.
Mm-hmm. I
Mhm.
could.
Mm-hmm.
It's expensive, though.
What is it?
Burnished Orchid.
Yeah, that's 40 bright dust, isn't it?
I think so. Let me see how it looks.
If it's legendary shards and you think that's expensive, then we got another thing to talk about, Green.
Shh. I may have a problem. Where did it go?
Okay.
There. Not a stop. Whoa! What's that, Jay?
That's a random project that I did over the weekend. I posted it in chat too.
That's a vague link.
It is
Yeah,
a big link.
Google doesn't like it's actually two separate links to be fair, but Google like yeah, Google when I share stuff it like adds its own link or whatever. I think those links should work.
So when you say that was your project, you
That
mean you
actually
read
didn't
that
take
right?
actually didn't take too long to do,
No, I'm sure.
surprisingly. The longest thing was waiting for the uh, glue to dry.
Mm-hmm. That's about right.
Okay.
What is
So,
going
how do
on
we
in
actually
my
want to do this?
Discord?
How do we want to do this? We're starting at heresiology, right? That's where we left off.
We finished. No, we're starting with Fideicide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it was before the wars, right?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
we got all the way through Extasiate. Yeah, what I'll figure is I'm gonna run through a basic intro. And I'm not gonna play like the summary intro or anything like that. I'm just gonna basically do what we normally like, what we kind of do for extra lore, just kind of that go, you know, and this is just I'm just gonna try to edit this as soon as I can, and get it up as soon as I can. It might not be until Wednesday night that we actually get it posted. Just depends on how everything goes.
Fine.
But
I don't think it has to be out like ASAP. I know you're wanting to get it out before Bloodborne goes out, but
yeah, I
you've
want to
got
get
a
it.
little bit of leeway.
Yeah. Yeah. My week is a little fun.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just figure we'll run through the basic, like basically the same intro, and then just jump into what did I say, Fideicide, and pick up where we left off with which was basically we finished the conclusion of Extasiate as much as we could. Excuse me. But yeah,
Okay.
and see how we can get, if we can get through Fideicide, Heresology, Impotent. It's Impotent, right? Impotent?
Yeah, it is. I'm just bad about reading
I do the same thing. Impotent, Catabasis,
Nigh,
Nigh,
and
and
Pelagenesis.
Palingenesis, right, okay, because Revanche is part of the Awoken, I believe.
Right. Pelagenesis is the last of Marasenna.
Because Palingenesis is when they get bombed.
Are there any cards that you guys feel like we need to read out of this? Because we're going
I
to...
think the last one that you had, I definitely agree.
Yeah. At least the last one. I can't think of anything else that isn't like something that we can't summate to some degree.
Yeah,
but I think the ones that we've had highlighted have been the important ones to read.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe a little bit of... Oh no, I guess we don't even need to read anything about the battle scene between Aldrin and Sjur or Sjur.
I like Impotent is like, it's got importance, but it's not like it's very specific importance. It's not importance as a whole, like to the whole thing. It explains a lot about Sjur and Mara, and it also portrays Aldrin as kind of a really good tactician, which is something we already know. Catabasis, I'm thinking maybe.
I think that's a good one.
Catabasis, just because it's got Mara's speech.
It also has some things that I think some people have overlooked that I really want to talk about.
I think Catabasis and Palagenesis too, I think, are the big ones for me.
Okay.
I mean, Nye
I'd
agree
Nye
with
is
that.
big. Nye is big, but
Yeah.
again, it's a specific big. It's not like it's just and really ultimately it's just a hint at what gets confirmed that we've already talked
Later.
about with
Right.
Well, I guess we could
Mara's
put it-
secret.
I guess we could put it this way: we had 3 of them we read from last time,
Right.
so let's make sure we've got 3 of them to read from this time, so that we know it's about 2 hours.
Well, we've got the last one's pretty short. Catabasis, Beard, I'll have you.
Honestly, if we want to read both of the Palagenesis, that might be
Yeah,
because
that might not be bad.
Palagenesis 2 is mostly kind of an epilogue.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
it's Mara
Palagenesis
speaking.
1 is actually I actually reread it. I think Palagenesis is the other one. That's the one that actually they get betrayed,
Right.
Yeah.
if I remember right. And I completely
Yeah.
forgot about that. That explains
Yeah.
a lot about how in The Awoken of the Reef, like why they're so like scraggly
Yeah.
is because of what happens in Palagenesis 1. I think that's
Yeah, that's a good one. I've got it divvied up now, so
okay, cool.
So before we get going, Jay, did you see the PlayStation Classic lineup?
Oh God! Someone said that to me at work today. They're like, "Oh look, the PlayStation's coming back." I'm like, the only reason, and I could not help myself. My response was, the only reason that's relevant is because PlayStation has like an absolute refusal for backwards compatibility, and they just
Yeah.
kind of looked at me, and I was like, I mean, am I wrong? And they're like, no, but that's
Well-
kind of mean. I was like, but I'm like, but it's the
I mean-
case.
I mean, I'm looking over at my SNES Classic though, and that's kind of proven you wrong in that regard.
Well,
But yet
yeah,
it shows something of Eastern gaming because
true. That's very
the
true.
games that I care about on the SNES, Star Fox and Star Fox 2, because they've never
Mhm.
put them on anything else. And meanwhile, I look at the list of the stuff that they have on the PlayStation Classic, and I'm like, all of these games are either out
Aren't they? Yeah, I was about to
that
say,
you
aren't
can
they?
get
Aren't they already where you can get
or-
them on current consoles?
right. And if they're
Legacies.
not that, then they're also games that have the ones that I don't think that are listed on here that should be listed on here are
Tactics.
like I gotta say Tactics isn't there for one thing.
I was surprised
plus
as hell
you've
that
got-
Tactics wasn't on there.
If Tactics was on there, easy sell.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
already
I would have.
considering it
I
because
would have
Wild
considered
Arms.
it.
Yeah,
I was
I'm already
considering,
considering it because Wild Arms is on there and Metal Gear's on there, but
And
like those are
Oddworld.
my major
Oddworld
ones.
was the
Yeah.
other one that I saw. I was like, oh, that's tempting because I remember that game.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'm gonna say between those couple, like that's where I'm kind of thinking. Plus, I lost hours on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Oh my
Mhm.
god, or Puzzle Fighter. Sorry.
What was?
Um,
Was there one like Infinite Cube or something? Someone was telling me about something like
yeah,
Infinite
with
Cube.
the Intelligence Cube. It's
Intelligence
actually really
Cube.
fun.
That's what.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that's
what
actually really fun.
someone at work was like. No, you need to play it. It's like the weirdest game to describe, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
was like,
once you get down the basics of it and start handling it, it's a lot of fun. But that is definitely a good one. But I somebody had said like, what? There's no Symphony of the Night on here, and I was like, yeah, because they have a remake of
Oh, yeah.
Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood coming up. And
Well, yeah, that's
of
the
course
whole-
they're not
yeah.
going to pop that. Like, no
No.
way.
Well, I mean,
Anyway.
why would you remake why would you just re-release the original when you have a full blown already acknowledged remake being remastered? Like it, yeah. No,
Well, and
the
it's
one that
not,
surprised
though.
the
Like,
one that
that's-
surprised me was Tactics. I was really surprised that Tactics wasn't on there because I was like, that is such an easy win.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have to
Yeah,
change anything. Just literally port it because it was freaking amazing as it was.
Yeah, the PSP version would have been nice if they could have gotten it on there, but the original just
Oh, that's right.
runs
You
better.
said, yeah. Because I had the Game Boy. I had Tactics Advance. And
Yeah.
that was like it. I mean, it got grindy, but I mean, so did Tactics, technically. I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, but it was a grind I enjoyed versus one that I hated.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Because
But
at
yes,
least with
I did
Tactics, you
see
didn't have
that,
any
and
limits.
I felt like the asshole because of it was the same response that I had when they're like, guess what? You can change your PSN tag. And I'm like, welcome to 2000, guys. Like,
Yeah, but did you hear the debacle behind that?
no, is there been development on it? I
Oh
don't pay
God.
attention to it.
So if anybody even thinks to change it, they have to highly consider it, because the possibility exists that the name that you have currently is linked to content that you own.
Oh,
And by
no.
changing the name, it doesn't change the license over for the new name. So
What?
it could possibly kill your ownership of some of that old content because it's only registered to that
Well,
name.
that actually explains why they don't have name changing. Because that tells me that the linchpin to everything is the username, which is a
Yep,
terrible
I'm gonna
thing to
say
put
they-
your like. That's a terrible thing to put as
Right.
a connector. But yeah, that actually explains a lot about the PSN.
Yes, yes, it does.
Oh my god, that's
Yeah, pens.
That's
Whoa,
really-
that is all sort of jacked up. You're not wrong, man. The moment I read that, I was like, well, I guess I'll keep my name as is and just
wow.
go with it. But yikes.
Oh my god, yeah, they need to change they basically need to change their primary key on their database.
Yeah, which I don't think they're going to be able to do that too easily with a full
No.
established system at this
Mm-mm.
this point.
No, that's an absolute effing nightmare. That's what that is.
Yeah.
Like changing the format of a field on a fully established database is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, that's wow. But that does make that actually makes it make sense. Yeah.
It also unfortunately gives a bit more for those that want to try to attack the system, an easy out on how they can ruin it.
Yeah. Yeah. God, man, that's wow.
That's really flawed. Really.
Yeah,
flawed.
it's that's yeah. I don't really have a response.
No,
I'm like,
I don't either, because honestly, the moment that I had heard that and I had seen people commenting like, well, that's just stupid. I'm like, you don't realize what they just like told us. I think you don't realize the security issues that this.
well,
now
that also
presents.
explains also a lot of the reports about how it's such a pain in the ass to get your account back once
Yep.
it's been jeopardized. That actually explains it, because their entire basis of connection of information is around a user defined field, which, oh my god. I mean, like, God, that's, yeah. Why would you not just have, okay. My brain hurts just trying to understand why you would base it around a user field.
Yeah, it makes me a little happier that I've been maining PC a little bit more.
Yeah. It also, to be honest, it makes it highlights the difference of the backgrounds too between Microsoft and Sony, because Microsoft's a tech company, so their network is based, like, it's, you can make fun of Microsoft for what you want about, but Xbox Live is a really, really strong network.
It's a much better system, like hands down. It has always been a much better system. But if you look even at what Nintendo's doing, I really just think, as ironic as this is coming from two Japanese-based companies, it really shows how like inherently flawed the Eastern's understanding of how the internet works is versus those in the West, looking at what Microsoft has done and whatnot. Because the same is also true of software development too. Like most games that are developed from the East that have online components are crap in comparison to what you'll find a lot of times at the West. Because I'm looking at Nintendo and I'm looking at the offerings they have on the Switch, and I'm like, you guys still do not understand it at all.
Well, because Nintendo does, they do the similar thing, but their user IDs are all the alphanumerics, right? Isn't that
Yeah, I
that
gotta say
stupid long combo?
Yeah, they
Oh my God.
used friend codes, but then they converted the system over, so you now do have a user ID.
Oh,
But
okay.
in basis, you are still using that friend code as
Friend
your
code,
user
right.
ID.
Right, yeah. Which, I mean, it's a little bit of a... It's actually kind of like a halfway point between Sony and Microsoft. That's just funny. Oh my God.
Mhm.
I'm going to have to, like,
Though
sit back and think about that for a while.
Though the stupid thing is, the one thing they were trying to avoid with like cloud saves and everything was people cheating and like going back to older saves and all that. And that's exactly what you could do in Breath of the Wild.
Hmm.
So whatever they were trying to avoid didn't come to pass.
Yeah.
All right. Before we put Green to sleep.
I'm gonna
Sorry.
say before Green's like, oh my god, I don't like tech talk. Get out of here.
I mean, I like tech talk, but I'm already drinking like a cold coffee, like an yeah.
Immolation.
And I'm like, it's been a long day. It's a long day.
No worries. All right, let's go. Let me get this recording kicked off. We did Twitch. Okay, cool. Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back to episode 148 and a half of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on October 29th over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to our
side B, maybe?
I think we... Oh, you know, that's a great idea. That is... Thank you for flipping your tape deck over. And... Oh my gosh, that is an amazing idea. I'm gonna write that down. We're gonna start doing that for all our 2-part episodes. So, as always, want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again, especially on such short notice. Our topic for tonight's episode, as you can probably guess, is going to be a kind of a concluding look at the Marasenna lore booklet. But first, let's run through a quick introduction for those on the show with us tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green Eye Music Lover. Green, I hope you're doing well. How has the weekend treated you so far?
We hosted a champagne party, like a tasting party, because my sister's getting married next April, and we needed to figure out some cheap champagne that didn't taste like utter trash. So we hosted a champagne party on Sunday. And it turned out pretty well. We figured out that really the price of the champagne, it makes a difference only if you're drinking it straight.
Mm-hmm.
If you're mixing it, it doesn't matter.
No, it really doesn't.
You know, but that's a very important thing to discover via the scientific method, and I'm proud of you for doing that.
Yes. We had 6 people. We did a blind tasting, and it was awesome, and we may not have been able to taste things after a little while anyway, so... It was good.
I was gonna say, even if that for science is with alcohol, you know.
For science. Well, rounding out the usual team, we have the man who is known far and wide as the Destiny lore content cop, the one and only Beard Grizzly. Beard, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm getting over, as I've said a couple different places here. I'm getting over a migraine that I got hit with on Sunday, so I'm still recovering from that. But I guess that was just yesterday at that point. It was a bad one. I haven't had bad ones. There were ones that bad, I think, for like 6 months. So I don't know if
Ooh.
it's the official change in the season or what. But it was bad enough I had to call out of work. I'll put it that way.
Oh man. Yeah, I know we're going through season change right now here in the Midwest, and the weekend was a bit
Yeah.
brutal as well for even us, and I don't even even normally pay attention to it, and I was like, oh my god, I'm dead. So
Yeah,
I can only
it's starting to
imagine.
get it's
I can
starting
only
to get
imagine
colder out here fully at least,
Mm.
but that's the thing that'll help me out I think as we go along a little more. But yeah. Otherwise though, I've been pretty good. I am just about done every single entry within the lore books here finally, since Sunday had me flat on my butt. Uh, but I still I've only got like 5 entries left to go out of Ghost Stories, and I'm all done, and I'm back to business as usual.
Very nice, very nice. Well, as you can probably guess, this is going to be kind of a different intro, different episode bit, because normally we don't have to do this, but because of the amount of information that's involved in the Marasenna, we kind of wanted to split it up just so we don't hit everyone with a 5-hour episode, because honestly, that's probably close to what it would take to really give justice to the information that's contained here. Tonight's episode, we are planning on starting off where we left off on the episode that was released actually this morning, on the 29th this morning, which would be 148. So this is, like Beard had mentioned, this is 148 side B. We are going to start, I believe, if I remember just from 2 seconds ago, we're going to start with Fidea's side, and we are going to try our best to get all the way through Palingenesis, which will be basically the latter half of the Marasenna lore booklet. And I know that prior to show, for those of you who were not in the live stream prior to that show, which the live stream, as we have kind of mentioned before, we will have that up as unedited behind the scenes on the YouTube channel if you have any interest in checking those out. So you might be able to check that out and see this chat. But we did mention that we are going to call out a couple more entries than we had originally intended. So keep the ear open on that one for this episode. But with all that really being said, I'm not going to play any summary or intro clip necessarily, but I don't know, Green, I'm just going to kind of hand it off to you to kind of get us back into the groove of the conversation that we were in, with a basic introduction to Fidea's side.
Okay, so Fidea's side is kind of our first look at what happened after the Awoken woke up and established kind of their whole code, I guess you can call it, or the tenets that they followed. So the things that are most important that happen in this beginning of Fidea's side is that we learn about a new faction within the Awoken called the Ecclesiast. And there is a new character type or character name called the Diasrim. And that name comes up a couple different times throughout Fidea's side and Infinite, and basically up until the Awoken decide to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Mara's, like Fidea's side 1, is just a very basic introduction into the fact that Mara is kind of a hermit type character. She is not hermit as in she's literally bent over and like got the witch thing going on. It's more of she is out in the wilderness, away from everything, out on her little mountain essentially, and she's kind of the wise woman away from everything.
Mm-hmm.
There is the Ecclesiast.
I mean, she could maybe she just straightens out over the course of time. You never know.
I mean, Mara's got mysterious ways, so I mean, you never know.
Mm-hmm.
The things that are most important in Fidea's side 1 is the fact that Mara's away from the hub of everything going on, and we get the introduction of the Diastrum, who is described as a woman out of the 891 who calls herself the Diastrum. So if you remember from side A of this episode, the 891 were the original awoken crew members who were not in cryostasis when the change happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also important. Beyond that, is there anything else in Fideicide 1 that you guys think is important to bring up before we move on to the second one?
Go for it, Beard. Go for it.
The only major things that I was kind of thinking of, we see a little bit of talk about the ship spire. This, at least I am assuming, is basically what is left of the Yang Lewei. It is basically what holds a lot of the technology that the awoken people kind of guide themselves off of. U technology and whatnot is literally, for translation's sake, in case anybody's curious, U tech means good tech.
Mm-hmm.
That's really it. There is also a little later we will get understanding that there is Maltech, which is bad tech, or evil tech, I guess, technically, more than anything. Anyway, there's all of this stuff, though, at least kind of locked up within Shipspire. That makes it so that the awoken people don't have entire exposure to it, and there are certain peoples that are in charge of that stuff, and they are called the Utex. Part of that was actually set up with the last entry that we had covered with Extasiate. That was part of the verdicts a little bit. But the biggest thing, I think, and reason I wanted to highlight the Shipspire is because there is technology out of there that we will hear over time that is developed, and if it evolves, etc. Over the course of that, what we read with the rest of the Marasenna. So it's important to know where they're kind of getting that technology, at least.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was gonna do a similar call out to the Shipspire, because the Shipspire is of extreme importance.
It becomes super important, actually, in the next card with the Fideicide.
Right. Yeah. Right. And you see kind of what Beard was saying there, and we'll definitely be mentioning later. All of the developments really kind of, especially at the beginning, kind of initiate from that Shipspire, and that's because the Shipspire is the ship, is the Exodus Green or Langley Way or whichever name you want to take. And
yeah, we still got to talk about that entire whole pile,
right,
that bothers me.
Yeah. So and it's weird too, because it almost feels like the ship's spire. You kind of get this idea that this is and they mentioned this, I believe, in the Extasiate. I think this was a Samway and Alice. This was kind of their argument, was they wanted to climb back up the tether to the mother realm. The ship spire is that tether, is kind of the feeling that I get. So it's kind of this weird idea that this ship is like, I don't know, like it's that weird classic sci-fi trope of like a ship literally like stuck between two worlds, or it's stuck in like the middle of a portal, and it's like that's kind of the image that my head makes. I don't know if that was the intent of the writing, but like I just get this idea of like this spire ship. Yeah, Dino in chat is Langley Way was the mothership of the Exodus Green fleet, so it was a very, this was a huge, to put it lightly, huge ship. All the other ships basically docked within this ship, or had capacity to somehow to hook up to this ship. It was a massive ship.
The description is in the original Braphos.
Right.
It talks about the size of Exodus Green a little bit, or Yang Leeway specifically.
Yeah, and so, but what I guess my point here is to imagine this like this. Oh gosh, I keep wanting to reference Voltron. I don't know how many of you guys have seen Voltron.
I totally understand where you're going.
Okay, so the home planet of Voltron, where the lions originated from. You know how that planet's kind of shaped? That's how I see the ship spire. Like, I see this kind of like dome / comet looking thing, and that is sticking out of the ground. And so this planet,
you're thinking Zarkon's
world? Zarkon's world. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so that's a complete, full disclosure, complete headcanon, like, just complete headcanon there. But that's just kind of like when I was reading it, that's kind of how I read it. And then when they're talking about the ship spire itself, and you'll see this in, especially, I believe it is Fideicide 2 or Fideicide 3, they've actually built porches around different tiers of the ship spire. And so you get the idea that not only is this a central feature of their culture, it's also it's actually a living space for especially the queen of the moment. So, at first it's Alice Lee, and then you'll get different queens. I think Nagina Penn and Devna Tell are the two other ones that I know off the top of my head that get mentioned. But like, so it's a very, very central part. Now, as the Awoken civilization goes on, they actually go beyond that. There's a call out in one of the cards that we are going to get to near the end of this, where they basically say we are well past the technology that was included in the ship spire, and we are our own success. I love that card, actually. I love that card. And you kind of see the breakdown between UTech and Maltech a little bit even more that way. But yeah, ship spire is hugely important to the distributary Awoken. Mostly because it's like it's a very hard anchor point to their original selves. It contains the seeds from which their civilization sprung.
And I'll round out where I'm thinking on this real fast too. But if we think about the Watchtower and what that looks like with having the portal on top of that, it almost makes me think that it was like the Watchtower was built in recognition or understanding of how Lai Wei was built or was, or in some relation to it. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Probably really doesn't. But for me, at least, that was the first thing I thought of. Because when I was reading this, I was thinking, oh, well, the distributary is technically like where the Dreaming City hangs out. And then I remembered, no, it isn't. No, it isn't at all. But it sounded so familiar to that because they were also talking about it being like a spear tip that popped out from the ground. And that's exactly what the Watchtower looked like to me. So like as a visual representation, either it was meant or not, I don't know. The Watchtower just feels so similar to me in that regard.
Yeah, and Dino is saying the Castle of Lions is another thing that they were thinking, and I was like, yeah, actually that makes sense as well.
Well,
but yeah,
the Castle of Lions makes sense as like a docking mechanism at the very least, but not necessarily in the same regard of what we're talking about here. In addition, there is also the other episode, just to kind of keep talking about Voltron. Sidebar.
It's a completely worth it. If you haven't seen the new Voltron.
The new Voltron doesn't really get good, I would say, until like season 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
And that's saying that the stuff beforehand is still amazing. But as soon as you get up to like season 4, it takes a completely different turn and starts to really feel different from the original Voltron and then some. But it deals with so many like different spatial anomalies and whatnot that I love it. And why I keep harping on it. But there is an episode where there is a ship that's actually caught between dimensions.
Yes.
Remember that one?
Yes.
So that's the other one I was kind of thinking of as well.
Okay.
And that was into turn because of the comet that they actually had pieced and pulled from it. But half of that comet was actually what had birthed Voltron, and then the other part got stuck between dimensions. But yeah, I thought that was. I thought that was the
yeah, I completely forgot about that. That was a good episode too. But
that was such a good. All of a sudden, it's like, wait, what's your name? You're not Shiro. Who are you? Sven? Are you kidding me? Oh, great! There's a multiverse in Voltron. This is just what I needed.
Sorry, Greg. We'll stop talking about Voltron. I was just, that was
another hour.
That was totally, the ship spire is totally, I mean, I cannot harp on the importance of the ship spire enough when it comes to this particular species.
Yeah.
All
right, let's go on to 2, where we're going to be here for another hour.
So 2 is super important because it is the death of the first death of the Awoken that we know about. It is a pretty big deal in so much as they actually host the funeral within the ship spire. It's below the ship spire,
The
if I remember
lake.
correctly.
It was on the
Yeah,
lake of
Lake of
something leaves. I just
Yeah.
blanked.
Yeah.
The funeral barge on the Lake of Leaves burst up in magnesium white fire. So it's far below the ship spire, but it's kind of in that same vicinity. Which the ship spire, like they were talking about, is kind of the host of the civilization in that area. Like everything goes through that. Not to pull Voltron back into it, because I don't want that to happen again necessarily. I love you guys, but no. But the first death happens. It's one of the 891 fell, and they were shot by a matter laser.
Mhm.
That's a type of Maltec that we were talking about earlier.
Keep in mind that, because that comes back actually when we start talking about Impotent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All the Maltec was supposed to be locked up in the ship spire's vaults, which is pretty important because if I remember correctly, that's part of the initial verdicts, like not to harm another. Essentially, I don't think that was exactly the wording of it, but she, Elise Lee, the first queen, locked it all up.
Yeah, there wasn't necessarily a verdict about not harming each other, but there was, between the fourth verdict and the fifth verdict, there was kind of the fourth and fifth, there was kind of that nod, because it says UTEX must be heralded and heeded, and then also women should care and protect for men and the others.
Mm-hmm.
So there was kind of there was this kind of, it's never explicitly stated, but it's also they start talking about the Were-Guild of the immortals, and how you truly can't live with the realization of what you've done when you kill another immortal. Mm-hmm. I think that's in Fideicide 2 as well, where they mention like you only they can fathom the price that must be paid if you kill another immortal, like the just the infinite possibilities that you've canceled out and all that.
Right.
It's one of those things where it's like, because it leads, and I guess we'll get into it a little bit with Fideicide 3, and I think it's Heresiology, I think is also where where the Diasrime starts even kind of backing off because of the Were-Guild just gets too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to say this is the first time that they really called that out. In addition, I think that Alice Lee actually does mention that she had given, I don't know if you guys had mentioned this yet, but Alice Lee had given some of those boson lasers to select people that she felt she could not be without.
Yes.
So it was to her, basically to her greed and wanting to make sure that those people stayed alive, that she handed those weapons out, and instead ended up causing the death of another.
And actually, to play off that real quick, Beard, that is also the introduction of the difference between a Paladin and a Corsair.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we see here a Corsair is just kind of like a free ranging, almost like a pirate. Like, I mean, it's literally kind of just like this gun for hire almost. It's not, but it's kind of like they don't really owe anyone allegiance or anything like that. Whereas a Paladin is basically individuals who are supposedly of uncorruptible character and loyalty to basically the queen in general. Though, again, the fact that one person has died from a matter laser means that one of those Paladins, hint, 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 is not so uncorruptible.
Yeah. They actually went and got Mara. Like, they went and found Mara and brought her to the funeral and everything. And there's a confrontation between Mara and Elise Lee. Yeah.
I love that Mara takes advantage of the situation the way
she does,
though, in a lot of ways. Like,
she really does.
There's no other way to put it. This boon that can be offered.
Oh my gosh,
later on.
it's so great.
Yeah. Just keep that in mind this entire time of especially keeping in mind like Tenant 1 of the of the Awoken summarized again, which is the people were awoken and they were immortal, and that there would be no lies told amongst the Awoken.
Yeah, a good paragraph to start that on is Elise thought Mara might say that. Elise also thought Mara might try to push her off the balcony, but she now knows that that was a petty fear. Mara was not the diatribe.
I do like the call out on that one. Like, I do
Yeah.
like, she's like, she could, no, she wouldn't be. And she gives nod to the fact that Mara, even though Mara has different goals, right? And I think you just said that too. Even then, Mara understands the price of
The value
taking
of a single
awoken
awoken
life.
life. And then she just literally calls her out. Why do you love lies so much? And then this is
I love
probably
this response.
this next paragraph is, I think, the crux of how Mara works, because it tells you that it's not necessarily lies, at least in her mind. It's not lies. The pale radiance of Mara's eyes, the flush of violet stain around them, secrets. Even if everyone shared a single truth, all our minds would produce different versions of the truth. We speak these subtruths, and like flowers of different seed, the subtruths compete for the light of our attention. In time, only the fiercest and most provocative strains remain. They are not always the truest. Better to keep secrets, your majesty, better to tend a great mystery, and so starve the flowers before they can grow. That is how I would be queen. And so it's the establishment of wonder that she really kind of sort of starts preaching in this, is that she wants to keep things secret and mysterious, and eventually she'll set up her coven. We'll find out.
And ironically, if Alice Lee had remembered what she had told Tamara before all this happened, she would have remembered that she was the one that set all this up.
Yes, she was.
Real quick before you jump on, I forgot to define that term that I just used. Weregild is something that actually gets used elsewhere in Marasenna and actually throughout the Awoken in general. Their culture kind of mentions this a couple places. Weregild is actually a derivative of a Germanic term. It's from Old German law, and it's defined as blood money or the monetary value assigned to a person set according to their rank that's used to determine the compensation paid by the perpetrator of a crime to the victim in case of injury or to the victim's kindred in the case of homicide. So basically, it's a reparative payment that is determined and paid by those who cause harm or even death to another in the Germanic culture. And so it was actually, it was something that was very, very common. I believe it was, it's derived, it's the equivalent to Wehr, which is man, and Geld, which is payment in German. And it's a very old concept. I mean, it's like, from before 1862, really, we see this concept. But it is actually, weregild is actually a term that is legitimately present in reality. I know I've seen a couple people bring it up before, and I used it without even thinking, but I wanted to kind of reach back and give a definition to that word. While I'm giving, go for it, Beard.
I was going to say, ironically, you could have almost interchanged that word with what fideicide is, because it's not in any accepted dictionaries from what I was able to really look around for. But what I have listed, it has said loosely relates to being a killer of faith or one who breaks a truth.
Like an iconoclast.
Yeah, kind of like that. But it was the closest definition I could kind of pick through with kind of grabbing the base words of it.
Right.
But I realized that we didn't define what fideicide meant yet, but I figured good time. Yeah,
exactly. And two more terms really quick to define there. Well, I don't know if we've heard the second one, but the ecclesiast. This is I kind of this is me kind of taking a little bit of a leap here, but I think that's a tie back to ecclesiast, which is actually someone such as a priest who administers a church, which is often referred to as ecclesia. And it's usually seen in religious gatherings or groups. So it's a very, very, very somber, very, very somber position generally. It's someone who is very loyal to a certain organization. We're going to see, if we haven't, I'm kind of going off my head right now, but I don't think we've seen it just yet, but we are going to see a term, sanguine, which is, interestingly enough, the meaning of sanguine is anticipating the best, optimistic, confident, or full of hope. And so we're going to see with this upcoming event that I believe Green is going to get us to here in a second, we're going to see a conflict rise up between the ecclesiast and the sanguine. So just keep in mind those definitions. You have the old traditional loyalist and the ecclesiast, and then you have these new optimistic progressive minds in the sanguines. And kind of just keep that in the back of your minds when Green talks about the Theodicy War.
Which is in Fideicide. Fideicide, there we go. It's like, that's not how you say it. It's not Fidocide. We're fighting dogs, guys. No, the Theodicy War is one. It is. Is it the first one? I would say it's the first one. It's the first one mentioned as far as like civil war within the Awoken.
The Theodicy War. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the first term. It's the first time that you see. It's not the first disagreement, but it is. I almost say it's probably the only war. Because I think
there's another one that happens afterwards that's kind of an offshoot of it, but
the others I would say are more skirmishes, I think, than I would say they are
Theodicy War. Yeah, Theodicy is like, I mean, it's like it. Dare I say it's the World War of the Woken.
Right.
Yes.
And unlike humanity, they learned from the mistake of what happened, and they didn't repeat it. I mean, and that's even called out, I think, again in Palagenesis, or it's Catabasis, Mara's speech about, I think Dino quoted it earlier in chat, about we are our own triumph. Like that, I think, is kind of what she's back referring to, is they learn, like, even though they disagree with each other, even though they have, these one-off skirmishes, these assassination attempts that we see in Impotent, they don't go to the level that they did in Theodicy Wars. And I think that's largely because of kind of what we see in Fideicide 1. And then, Fideicide 3 here is explaining this too. The cost is just not worth it, I think, in their minds.
Oh, no. But the thing is they are, and it was called out in Fideicide 2, is that the whole crux of the start of this is the idea that supposedly Elise Lee is preventing the Awoken from ascending to a godlike state, or preventing them from attaining their godlike state.
Yeah, she preemptively killed their godhood. Their godliness, I think, is... They basically accuse her of deicide.
Yes.
Or the Deisrim accuses her of deicide.
Which kind of kicks off this whole thing. And then once the war starts, people fight it for different reasons. They call out an immortal's grief and murder's guilt, left untended will never fade. Thus it became known to those who fought in the Theodicy War that they had committed an incomparable evil. However, they could not confront their own responsibility, so they rose up in wrath against those who had given them cause, whether by caging them in flesh bodies or by drawing blood over grievance. The war continued by spear and bow and knife and scalpel, by old machine and new invention. Ever did the Diastrim's faithful call for the unawaring of Queen Elise Lee. So they're fighting this to try to remove the queen. And then now enters in the Diastrim's camp Osana, which, if you remember from side A, is Mara's mother. From prior to the transformation, she is also Mara's mother after the transformation. And Asana is apparently famed for her skill in negotiating, and she goes and she comes with Aldrin, and wants to talk to, surprise, surprise, Mara. And she wants to convince Mara of trying to help against this. Now, Mara remembers how the queen led us here out of chaos and saved us from the twin blindness of darkness and light. Mara knows what the queen keeps secret. Mara has seen the strife in our souls, the clash from which we were made. We could not even have been gods with this flaw in us. Rather, we were made from this schism. For all life is born from energy gradient, as life in the world before was born from the gradient between hot proton-rich vent water and cool seawater. We were born at the shadow line at the edge of light and dark. We are the tremors in that fault forever that schism led us. If you can't tell, a lot of the text of Mara's, specifically speaking, is very poetic and has a lot of things to dissect. You almost want to take a poetry, like you're dissecting poetry to figure out what's being said. But Mara knows what's going on. She knows all the secrets. Because Mara was the first. And the ecclesiasts were really upset about this heresy because this is not necessarily something that they thought was true to be true. And they scattered to the points of the compass, telling everybody they met. And they want to this starts an old grudge that comes up later on. We'll see. But Osana spoke to the Diastrim, who was also heartsick from the killing and who longed to withdraw from the world and seek transcendence within. So in this card, we kind of start to see that Mara is not the Diastrim, if Osana is speaking with it, but theoretically it could be the Diastrim, but we kind of see that it's not at this point. And then there's the mention of the Were Guild for the murder of the immortal, and trying to see if there's anything else.
There is one thing. For this is the moment. So the beginning of the Theodicy War is the moment where I had made that comment on side A. I had made a comment about, she's going to regret making this proclamation about secrets.
Mm-hmm.
This is where that happens, because basically the entire the shot that was fired that made this whole thing just like it completely explode is the fact that you have the ecclesiasts are aligned with the Diastrim. The sanguines are aligned with Alice Lee. So again, going back, remember those two different definitions. The ecclesiasts are very hardcore. We're supposed to be deities and blah blah blah, and the sanguines are more kind of they're in the city. They're more they follow what's known as the seventh verdict, which, to remind everyone, Woken don't owe allegiance to anyone. They are complete in of themselves. And so the difference here is that the ecclesiasts are like I said, they're from the tribes of the forest. There was a belief that they had been made out of the friction, and that basically one day this conflict's going to be resolved. Like that is their belief. A lot
of the ecclesiasts were of the 40,000 as well.
Correct. It was a very large number. In the cities, however, the sanguine were the ones who followed very closely to the seventh verdict, which is that basically said the Awoken don't owe any debts. They don't owe that. They are created by a cosmic gift, and they carried neither responsibility nor eschaton. And so that's where you get these two battling heads of conflict here. Now, up until the Theodicy War fires off, really they just been arguing philosophy. Like it's just basically two competing schools of thought. However, what fires the first, like kind of what lights the fuse, is that the Diastrim goes to the sanguines and accuses Alice Lee of deicide, and that whole thing spins into, well, she was the first to awaken in the world, blah blah blah, and she chose how to create us. She chose to put us in the mortal forms and all this stuff. Well, Alice Lee, who is known as the Queen Without Secrets, has supposedly told everyone everything about when she created them because she was the first. She had not told them about this. And all of a sudden, doubt just explodes because all of a sudden they have this idea, this fear that the Queen Without Secrets had not only just kept a secret, but a secret of this level, of this quote unquote violence against their godhood or godheadness. You know, and that is where the kind of the conflict ignites. Is they have this desire to defend, and there's a very deep unsettlement right there. So there's that whole thing, and then of course once it's like anything else. Once something gets ignited, it's very hard to put it back in a box. And that's where the Theodicy War really kind of took off. And then we get to where Green had mentioned just a few minutes ago. Fideicide 3 is where it's kind of now gotten to a point where it has gotten so out of hand that even the Diasrim is like, I'm done. Like, I did not necessarily mean for this, you know, to happen.
It takes on its own beast. Becomes its own beast.
But I think it's not in Fideicide 3, but it might be Heresology.
Which part?
Where the Dice Rim goes to actually speak to Mara.
Osana goes to speak to Mara in Heresiology.
Heresology. But the Dice Rim craves secret knowledge, and she sought Mara upon the mountaintop. Here she vanished. If she was ever known again, it was not by the name of Diasrim.
No.
Yeah, that's Fideicide 3. That's the very end of Fideicide 3. And that's also the end of Fideicide 3 is the Diasrim disappears, and then Queen Lee, who still was queen at this moment, but the guilt of all the deaths and the war was such a heavy burden that she actually abdicated to a new queen, who was, I believe, Nagoya Pin, I think, is the one that came after her.
Yes, that is the second queen, and we get introduced to her in Imponent.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we get Heresiology, which is Osana's confrontation with Mara. And Beard, did you have anything on Fideicide before we move on to Heresiology?
No, we covered everything I was gonna.
Cool. There's two things of note in Heresiology. The first one is Aldrin and his bird, which this is probably the most endearing section I've read about Aldrin. Like, it makes me really sad and really happy for him at the same time. But Aldrin is taking his bird with him to go find Mara with Osana, and the bird is not doing well. It's kind of on its last leg, and there's a line in here where basically Mara accuses him, "Brother, your eagle killed a parrot today. He had to hunt. You won't forbid him his last pleasures, will you?" So Aldrin is like making sure that the bird goes out and enjoys the last little bit of its life, which is very sweet.
It is, and you also totally see the difference between Aldrin and Osana in this card, and it's it's amazing because Osana's just like, I'm done.
Yeah. Osana just sits down and cries for Mara.
Yeah.
She's tired of searching for her. She pouts.
I'm gonna say she just screams out like, "I don't care if I'm immortal. I've had enough of this walking crap."
I
just love the image. It's like the second paragraph, and it's basically his mother is tired of walking, so she sits down on a giant melon and bellows, not yells, bellows. Mara.
Yeah, basically. She is so done at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. That was like the highlight of this particular entry for me, was this, like, you get a such a clear picture of the three of them, like their personalities. Like there's Mara and Aldrin, who I think later in this card, Aldrin kind of nods to the fact that Mara never answers a question directly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then, so there's those two, and then there's Osana, who's just like, she just calls it kind of how it is, and just
Mara gets some pretty good digs on Osana.
Oh yeah, no,
too.
she does.
Oh,
but
my
I'm like,
goodness.
oh my god, but like, oh my gosh, I love Osana's personality.
Like the whole conversation starts with Osana asking, or Mara asking Osana, "What brings you to my little camp, mother?" Lies, lies and secrets, and the girl who didn't want to be my daughter, who doesn't know the difference between them. I know the difference between a girl and a daughter. Your daughter picks up your baton at the end of the race and goes on living the life you've taught her. You wouldn't want that, mother, because then I'd be all your fault. And it's like, she's such a sassy teenager at this point still.
And Osana's like, that's true.
But you know what I meant. Yeah, there's some really good moments here. And then Osana calls Mara out and says the Ecclesiast are her creation. The Diastrim was her pawn. She allowed the Theodicy War because she was afraid we'd be too comfortable here. Also, so Queen Elise would need her help politically. Mara couldn't afford to be the most radical dissident. She had to seem moderate for her beliefs to thrive. Isn't that right, Mara? So Osana basically knows what's up without really like having too much. She just knows her daughter well enough to be like, this is what's happening. She may not directly be affecting all of this, but she pretty much just orchestrated it. And Mara doesn't exactly deny it, and she doesn't support it.
No, but it's that golden rule. Silence means acceptance.
Yeah, basically. And then she kind of just totally just changes the subject.
Yep. Oh, we have to go into town. I have to sell some more maps out there because I can't go out in space and let people, see my body while it gets affected by void space. I had to change what I needed to do in life, so this is what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
The Senna is too powerful.
Oh my god. Stop it. Stop it.
Next,
Stop
please.
It. Oh.
Somebody else take the lead on this one. I'm just gonna head desk over here for a little bit.
All right, so Infinite One, we start to kind of see some stuff about who is actually taking over while there is no queen in charge. Because after Alice Lee actually recants or rescinds the throne, there's not really a lot of power that's there, but we find that there's a group in charge of what's happening with the Awoken people still out of the capital, and it is the Jensen Scribes. This is the first real notion that we actually have of these guys outside of Asher was one of them, and we had a couple of little bits and pieces out of Destiny 1 about them, but we never knew what was actually going on with them, and here we finally go. They are an Awoken creation. They actually do take down just a lot of journals, notes, and everything like that. But they are more akin to storytellers than much else. They also are very well aware of how, or at least possibly, how Mara and her family may have actually orchestrated a good bit of the Theodicy Wars. This actually leads into the character known as Shur Ido. Shur steps into the picture, and everybody looks over at her and says, "What do you want? You're kind of big, hulking, mean, and we don't know what you need." She basically is clamoring for Mara's head because she feels she is the one that is effectively the cause of her mistress's death, or at least gone missing, or that Mara had killed her. And this is the Diastrim. The Diastrim was the one in charge of Xur because she is also an Ecclesiast. So per that point, Mara is kind of the one that Shur is blaming, and Shur goes to the scribes to be like, "Where is she? Let me hunt her down."
No,
Uh,
Sejur or Shur or however we're gonna pronounce it is also a paladin of the First
yes,
Queen.
I was getting there.
I like this part of the story. It's the
I
beginning of
fine,
a love story,
but
okay?
you handed this off to
I
me. So
know.
gosh.
I know. And we're getting yelled at in chat by Blue for not mentioning the Maltech.
I mean, yes, and I was also getting there. God.
Okay,
you're
hey,
the
no,
best with me.
hey, look, I did not interrupt you, Beard. I mean, just.
I know. It's okay. But yeah,
I'm waiting to see if I get virtually slapped for this.
and I think I'm gonna be the one head desking for a little
Oh,
while. Green,
man.
you want to take over again? But no, the whole concept here that we do see is just the simple fact that Legshur is popping out from the woodwork and is basically just crying out for vengeance at this point towards Mara, which we find over time is kind of a very complicated situation.
Mm-hmm.
But we, of course, do see that Jur is also in possession of a Multec laser. And per this discussion, per where we were at, we didn't know that there was anybody else that had one. But we also knew that there was somebody within the ranks of the Icleists, that I stumble over that word all the time, that had that Multec laser, as we had said before. That being said, it's at least assumed that Jur was the one that ended up pulling the trigger and having killed one, possibly more paladins that were around Alice Lee at the time. But it gave their side a little bit more power just because of that kind of technology. But as it is noted, as Green had said too, she does wear the is it 8-star crest of the Paladins?
Yeah, the crest of the 8 stars, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was now. I think it's 8. I want to say either 7 or 8, but I believe it's 8.
Yeah, because it's the original 8 verdicts.
Right, and at that point, that's where we kind of know that she was in service to Alice at one point, and then she split off and went on with a different teacher, different leader, and that was the Diasrim. So the moment that she kind of, like, others are starting to put 2 and 2 together, that Mara seems like she had a hand with it, or at least is, as Shur is kind of figuring here, she's the one that at least is responsible for the death of the Diasrim, or the at least understanding that the Diasrim is now missing. There is no full confirmation of death as far as we know, but Jur is very, very well figured that she's dead or that she got killed.
And if you remember, the Diasrim said back in a few cards ago that she was wanting to essentially disappear. She wanted to get out of the whole scene because she didn't feel like the Ecclesiasts were really following what she was hoping, and she didn't want all that death on her hands anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I for somebody so simple-minded, quote unquote, and used loosely, Shur's character is a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be. So keep that open mind as we kind of go along and talk about her. But she's so cool.
Yeah, real quick to kind of jump off that that comment. When the scribes had given her permission to go hunt Mara, and then she basically interrupts a party at the Queen's palace.
Yes.
And all the scribes are like, oh no, this is not how we expected this to end. And they go to the historians and they're like, can you calm her down? Because she seems a little pissed. And because she is. And they they ask who she is, and they say, oh, she was one of Queen Alice paladins, but she was an ecclesiast who believed that we would one day be called to repay the gift of our awakening. And the scribe's response is, would she defy the queen's protection and murder a guest of the court? The answer is, oh, absolutely. She was an absolute terror. I was like, and the response is, the scribes are like, well, we're out. Like, we're just going to, and they all just start like running out because they're like, we're going to piss the queen off. Oh my gosh. That's all at Impotent 3. And it's just like, you just see like, you see Sher's like just absolute laser focus on like, yeah, it's Dino in chat. It's the best moment where time and space bend, and you could just hear the oh no.
Uh-huh. The funny thing is
go for it.
She deduces back in Impotent 2, like, who in the court is Mara.
Oh, yeah, and she hunts her down, and then she gets mad at her.
She follows her, and she doesn't necessarily get mad at her right away. Like, she's already mad. But she followed the hooded figure to her laboratory and watched Mara work on a bolometer to search for signs of primordial gravity waves. So Mara is actually working as kind of a scientist at this point, building something. And it's really kind of an adorable moment where Sher's fury and grief whetted themselves against Mara's thoughtless grace and ancient beauty until at last her heart unseamed itself and spilled its hot blood in a shout. It is the very weird thing. Like, she's still angry at her, but she can't bring herself to kill her.
It's the whole, oh, you're so cute.
I don't know if it's, maybe.
Vegeta, can I have one?
Oh my god.
God.
That's
Oh my
appropriate. That's
God.
appropriate response too, actually.
It kind of is. It's just she cries Mara's name and then throws down the matter laser, the Maltech, in front of her. And she says, I cannot live while you live, but I cannot bear to kill you. I challenge you to a duel to the agony. I will fight your most beloved companion to the death and leave you forever maimed, or else die in the attempt. So this kicks off the rest of the arc for Impotent, because this is where she essentially challenges Mara, and Mara's like, all right, I'll bring in my brother. And so they decide that oh my gosh, Blue, stop it. He's putting gifs in chat of Vegeta now for those of you.
It's Nappa.
I know, but like,
please.
oh my gosh, I'm turning my nerd card at the moment. But
It's fine. I'll gladly hang on to that for you for a little while.
I'll earn it back here in a moment.
You will, considering you're sitting here dealing with Blue while you're trying to focus on something. It's like the name of the show or something, Blue. What do you run?
Tangent.
But they decide that they can't decide to the death, or they can't decide that the contest would be won on a single fight of some sort, because that would just be very dependent on luck and whatnot.
And actually, that was Uldren's call.
Yes.
Because Uldren responded with, oh no, we don't want to leave this up to chance. Let's make sure.
Such an old grudge deserves to be tested well. I propose that we fight with blade, rifle, and the 5th generation air superiority fighters, aka airplanes.
It's just out of the blue.
I'm right.
It's ridiculous. Like, all of a sudden, he's just like, let's fight with knives and rifles, and then let's hop in our planes. Really?
I viewed
Is
it
that
as
where we're going?
I viewed it as the progression, though, because it's hand to hand combat, then it's ranged, and then it's true
Notice
combat.
they don't use the bow.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't allow her to use her bow, which I
which
find
is
interesting.
Because the whole point of it was oh god, first off, would you want to be on the other end of Wishender?
No, I've been sniped in Crucible with it multiple times today, so no, not so much.
Oh, because
he
said something about it's oh, I'm gonna have to find it exactly. I completely cannot find it at the moment. But yeah, it was something about like the actual act of the hunt. I think. Which you're
Mhm.
right though. Which you're right. But I always just took that as Aldrin just kind of being like, yeah, I'm not stupid. You don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
Mhm.
Which
that's a freaking ballista. Like
she uses my favorite auto rifle instead, which I'm totally fine with. Do you know which auto rifle she ends up using?
the tiger spike.
Tiger Spike.
Yeah. I love that auto rifle.
Yeah, I
So,
like how they called out that she used Tiger Spite. They didn't really say what he used, as far as I remember.
yeah, they really
It
didn't.
was kind of weird because I figured he was going to use like a scout rifle of some kind, but it would make sense because the scout rifles that the Awoken have are kind of crap. Anyway, carrying on.
Yeah. Don't know.
He did a carbine.
Yeah, that's as far as it got really noted.
Oh yeah.
Though.
Like
I
there's
didn't
not
hear
like an actual name. Yeah.
Yeah, like no actual model. Like we could probably figure that he used a the one that I can't think of now off the top of my head. But if it's like the similar as the Tiger Spite, it would be the similar range as the that scout rifle.
Mhm.
Which also, funny enough or stupid enough, means that the Awoken's weapons really haven't come too far. Which I also find is fairly interesting if they're using a Tiger Spite with different, possibly like different enhancements or different attachments on it, of course. But then they are using that stuff now in current day Awoken territory. That just to me is interesting to note. It's almost like how Star Wars hasn't really changed in over 10,000 years apparently. Anyway,
Well, and I also kind of see that as similar to bleh, I just blanked. Not the hive, but like how the fallen will kind of fixate on close combat. Like
Because
Right.
they kind of have the fractal knives.
right. Well,
You
you
know,
have to think about where they spend most of their time, and a lot of it was spent on ships. They weren't out and about too much until they invaded Earth.
right. Well, no, right. And then the other thing is with the Awoken, they were hunters, and so you see a lot more prevalence of bows and knives.
Well, the bows in particular are considered some of the good tech, the U tech. The guns, the laser guns, like Telesta would be a Maltech in their eyes because it is
And that's kind of an age-old understanding too of the difference
right.
between, the usability, right? A bow or something like that can be used for hunting, whereas a gun really in classical, especially in classical literature and stuff like that, and a lot of literature tropes, guns are perceived as only being for war. Like, I mean, I know you can make this argument back and forth. I'm not going to get into that argument, but like that's the kind of combination there is that bows are multi-purpose. Like it's like a sword, right? A blade is
Right.
potentially multiple service, whereas a gun is going to generally be to harm something, to harm someone.
Right.
But yeah, I also do like how in Impotent 4 you see another nod to Shur's personality in the hunt between her and Aldrin. How she just is like Aldrin's
She
like
stirs the
Aldrin is like
force into a frenzy.
the master hunter who is like able to blend in, and she's just like, I just have this picture of her just like stomping through the woods, and she's just like just like
And so
oh
anything
my
he
god.
did stirred up the yeah. She's smart. She has a different approach than he does. Whereas like he approaches very agile. He's very agile in his approach and everything. She's very straightforward. And you see that in all three battles, I think.
Yeah, sorry, I
Uh,
skipped the first one, so
it's okay. The first one, I mean, it's the knife battle. It does end in a draw. There's not the thing of note is that Shur calls out Mara and asks if she's afraid. Do you sweat? Does your breath come short? And
oh yeah.
Mara basically says she doesn't really say anything. She just makes Shur's put her hand to the face, pressed her hand to Shur's faceplate and left no stain. She held Shur's gauntlet to her heart so Shur could feel her steady pulse and even breath. Sure said, "You don't care about him. It would be nothing if I maimed him." Mara says, "You asked the right questions, but are the wrong sibling." There's a slight tender moment there, but it's also very dark at the same time, as I would imagine everything with Mara would be. But then we get into Infinite 4 with the fight through the forest. Like Blue was saying, Aldrin is a master hunter type person, slipping through the forest, very quiet and whatnot. But the way that Chur takes on everything, she drove the animals into a frenzy with violence and habitat disruption. Parrots and crows warned each other of Aldrin's stealthy hides, and jealous predators forced him out of his carefully scouted trails. Sejur caught him with his back against a rift lake and shot him as he tried to cross the lake bed. The wound was not mortal, for the water ruined the terminal ballistics, but she had won the match. So, first one was a draw, second one went to Sure. Yeah, you have a very go ahead, Blue, with that. I think that's apt.
Oh, sorry. I was actually just kind of typing the explanations in each of these combat situations. In the knife fight, Sure is described as having a straightforward prison yard jab attack, whereas Aldrin has what's called a whirling deceptive theater.
Deceptive.
Which it's exactly kind of what Green was just saying. It's a very lithe and very agile focused. He's not so much concerned about hitting as much as he's about dodging and just getting in nicks over time. It's more about wearing your opponent down. And then
One
you see
could
that
say death by 1,000 cuts.
Yep. Which is a valid thing.
I don't know, like voice of 1,000. Moving on.
Oh gosh, no. But then you see a very similar situation with the hunt. She picks the auto rifle. He gets a silent, shooter. It's again that kind of nod to the different, dare I say, play styles of these two figures. And then you see, but then, and this is where I have to tip my hat to Aldrin, because the final battle is where Aldrin throws that entire thing mostly out the window. And he it's almost like he's been playing with her this entire time. And on the third battle, he goes straight for the throat, and without mercy, without hesitation. So what they do is they have agreed, of course, to do the air fighting, the air fighters. And so Sure tells him, basically Aldrin kind of plays it up, and he's like, well, how do I know I can trust the equipment? How do I know that it's going to be actually what you say it is? Like, this is something that I could see you, kind of tricking me into, all this. And it Sure gets kind of like, she gets a little miffed, and she's like, blah, blah, blah. Basically the Jinsum scribes are going to provide everything. And all this stuff will come from her personal stockpile. And so
Sure has a stockpile of weapons.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't really surprise me of all the things in these cars. That is not the thing that surprises me a lot. But, and so Aldrin's like, and then Aldrin confirms with her, he's like, okay, and we will have access to all the weapons these airframes can equip. And the answer is yes. And if we can't acquire them, we will replace them with training simulators so that they can, still access them, basically. And Aldrin's response is, okay, then I'm going to fly a dart. And he's like, it Sure actually kind of makes fun of him. She says, a dart, Sure jeered. Will you fly with its original weapons too? You think you can beat me with rockets and a gun? Aldrin,
and he's like,
he's like, I do. Do you accept these terms? And so then basically they take to the skies, and it's like the standard duel. They fly, they take 6 paces away and turn, except they're in ships. So it's like 100 kilometers and turn. And she actually dives down because the dart has a abysmal radar. And Uldren just come straight in. And all of a sudden, he just says, Fox 3, kill, engagement over. And that's it. And she thinks that he's bluffing, and she goes to come up underneath him to knock him out of the sky. And her what is it, the HUD?
Her panel, training panel.
Her panel just goes, bap, 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 you've been killed. Yep. She completely forgets that he just atom bombed the entire area.
Yeah. He was willing to sacrifice himself to take her out in the air-to-air. Because apparently 70 years ago, the last time that dart was serviced included an unguided air-to-air nuclear rocket.
Well, and I don't know if he actually necessarily killed himself. Because
a nuclear rocket would take out
because
quite
he said
a bit.
the only reason I kind of bring that up is like at 80 kilometers of separation, he fires the missile or fires the rocket. And then all that you see is that you see Uldren had simulation killed her and everything within several clicks. Like a click is a kilometer. So several clicks, I don't know. I mean, just to call it out there, but I still love the fact that, I mean, he just ruthlessly ripped her throat out. And it was just, you see this not just cunningness, but this willingness of Uldren's to really just go to unforeseen lengths to make sure that his sister is taken care of, that his sister is, protected, and, what he'll do for Mara is just pretty much anything. Yeah, maids in chat. It's like rock, paper, scissors. Uldren calls a nuke. It's
pretty much.
Oh my gosh.
The thing at the end of this card, though, is if you kept tallied of the wins versus losses, they ended in a tie. So Sure actually approaches Mara and says, I leave my fate in your hands. Be more kind to me than you were to my lady of the Diastrim. And Mara basically says, Rise, we'll take the stars together. Come with me. You're going to be an asset now instead of a liability. And that would lead us into the last card in this arc.
Yeah, I'm going to say they're doing that, and all the while, civilization's falling apart.
Pretty much.
The other thing to call out here is Uldren is not above snapping back at Mara over something. She basically looks at him and says, "You're about to lose this. What are you going to do about it?" And Uldren looks back at her and just says, "Am I simple?" And it is one of the most cutting things that I think I've seen him say to her. But it's just so on point to saying, let me do my work. This is my field. I know exactly what I'm doing.
He also has a gunshot wound in his leg at that time too.
He's so angry.
Yeah, I'm gonna say he's really not in his right head at that point. But yeah, to me it was just kind of a out of character moment for a second there. It was like, yowza, he really did just bite her head off. She kind of had it coming. Granted,
right.
It was one of those absolute moments where it's like, Mara, I don't think you want to say that to him right now. Maybe just step back for a second.
Give it his space. Give it.
So
Infinite 5.
We have the second queen, Naguya Pin, is what Blue had said earlier, ecclesiast. And so she's doing a lot of research. And we find out that Mara has basically kind of been using her to do the research for her. And they have a little bit of a showdown. Not too much, but it's just the Pen doesn't have the illusion that Mara is not using her. Like, she knows full well that Mara is using her. And she kind of calls her out on it a little bit. She says, "You use me to do your work politically and scientifically. You use me to bundle up the scribes in a neat little scroll for your disposal. I went along with it for the sake of the monarchy, Mara, not because I'm a fool. I don't know what you want or why you're so bent on keeping the Awoken uneasy and dissatisfied. I don't know how you manipulate the acclamations. But when I abdicate, I'm going to find Elise Lee wherever she's gone and ask her all my questions about you. I'm very interested in knowing the answers. And Mara's just like, you've been a wonderful queen. No one will ever replace you. And obviously, she probably doesn't say it like that, but in my head, she does. She's just, no, she's always disseminating, always. Everything is a little bit of a ruse for her. But the thing that they've been working on is trying to find these gravity waves. And if you remember back from the original cards of the transformation, the gravity waves, which were sent out by the anomaly ship, kind of kicked off the whole transformation thing. So I'm sure there's other things I'm missing in this card. Do you guys have anything else you want to call out on this one?
You get the name of the next queen.
I don't have it up on my
I believe that one is Devna Tell.
tell. Yeah. Yeah. The very last thing in this card, which is kind of you finally see Mara and Sejur kind of put things past and become a little bit more than just the bitter enemies / working for the boss kind of thing. It is the most adorable scene I could think of that they would give her. But they're getting ready to go up, and is it they're putting the telescopes out? Is that what this?
It's the one of the last research or sensor satellites.
Right.
Because they're
putting
at the Lagrange point.
Yes. So they're getting ready to send the last one up, and they're going up with the last satellite. And Sure ask Mara, what do you think we'll find with the satellites? Mara says, proof that it's time for us to go. Proof of what I've known since the beginning. Sure frowns in thought. She doesn't remember much before her awakening. Few of the 891 do, so Sejur was one of the original 891. But enough to trouble her. Time for us to go. The ship's turbines keen up to speed and then settle into whisper quiet cruise. Sejur reaches to strap herself in across from Mara. Impulsively, hard-faced, denying that she needs what she's asking for, Mara scoots aside to make room for her on the bench. Sure raises an eyebrow at her. Don't say anything, Mara warns her. Not a word. And so they pass the flight in silence, but not alone. So Mara's just like the equivalent of the elementary school kid who scoots over slightly and kind of pats the seat. But instead of being like pat, 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 she's just like scoots over to allow her room and is just like, if you say something, this is not going to happen. I'm warning you. It is a kind of an adorable moment, though.
It also feels like another one of those the helmet stayed on moments.
Yeah, the boots stayed on.
Oh!
If you're gonna make a Star Trek reference.
Wow. Okay then. Wow. So
there's nothing in that says that. It's just my headcanon. So Beard, you're reading the next card.
Oh, don't I know it? So the next card is called Catabasis. And for some of you, you may know that this is actually off of a, I think it's Mayan? No, it's a very Hindu relation. But it's the story, it is the story of, and I don't know why I lost my page here, as bad as I did. I feel like I covered this in another spot. I don't actually write it down here. But it's used in a few different places. The one that I actually have written here is my definition. Defines as a descent of some kind. In Greek myth, it could be a trip down a mountain into Hades or fall into madness, etc. But there is an actual story that's listed off of this, and I'm sure Blue already has that. He's chomping at the bit to talk about it. In the meantime, I'm going to actually read this card. Mara looks into the camera and lets the fire in her eyes speak. They are waiting on her, the distributary's millions, her awoken people. She has stoked their curiosity with 30 years of painstaking analysis. When they look up at the night sky, they see the stars of her observatories among the crowded bands of habitats, the spindly orbital factories, towering elevator counterweights, the burning roads of matter streams. Let me tell you of our world, she says. There are the facts of tectonics and atmosphere, of water and climate, the parameters of the sun that feeds them. No infants died last year. No child went unfed. No youth came of age illiterate. No one suffered illness who might have been treated. We have long surpassed the UTech gathered from Shipspire, yet we have grown carefully and cleanly. We have eluded pollution, eradicated plague, and chosen peace. No Maltech weapon has been discharged in centuries. Our atomic weapons were dismantled before they could ever be used. We are our own triumph. She has elected not to use graphics or theater. She would rather they remember her face. You know yourselves, she says. Let me tell you of your cosmos. We live in a spatially infinite isotropic universe, 12.1 billion years old. Its metallicity is ideal for life and for the spread of technological civilizations. In time, the distance between all points in the universe will contract to zero, and the cosmos will collapse into a singularity to be reborn in fire. There will be no end to eternity here. She pauses. She waits. The whole world is out there begging for the answer to the question. Our world is a gift, and we must refuse it. They are awoken. They love secrets. They will wait for her to explain. We have detected a pattern that was imprinted into our universe by its ancestor, a fingerprint of the initial conditions into which existence was born. From this information, we have confirmed the most primordial of awoken myths. Our universe is a subset of another. We live within a singularity, a knot in space-time that orbits a star in another world. Conventional relativity would suggest that time outside an event horizon passes quickly compared to a clock within, but our universe has a peculiar relationship with its mother. Thousands of years have passed for us on the distributary. Outside, centuries at most. We are a swift eddy in a slow river. These ideas may not surprise you after centuries of theorizing and philosophy, but we have decrypted new data from the cosmic microwave and neutrino background signals. We have discovered voices, the voices of distress calls. They tell a story of bravery, of war, and of desperate loss. We were not always immortal. We did not earn this utopia by a covenant with any cosmic power or by attaining an enlightened moral condition. We are refugees. We fled from an apocalyptic crash between our ancestor civilization and an invading power. She lowers her eyes. The signals we have retrieved tell us that our ancestors were on the edge of defeat, perhaps extinction. It is time that we accept our debt. The distributary is a refuge, not a birthright, a base to rebuild our strength, not a garden to tend. I ask you, Awoken, to join me in the hardest and most worthy task a people has ever faced. We must leave our heaven, return to the world of our ancestors, and take up the works they abandoned. If some of them survive, we must offer aid. If they have enemies, we must share our strength. We must go back to the war we fled and face our enemies there. She lets them dangle a moment before she drives it home. We have also determined that our birthright of immortality is tied to the fundamental traits of this universe. Once we leave, we will begin to age again. In time, we will all die. Will you join me, Awoken? Will you answer my call? All I offer you is hardship and death. All I ask is everything you can offer. But you will see an older starlight. You will walk in a deeper dark than this world has ever known.
Mara's got a flair for the drama, that's for sure.
I'm gonna say her and her brother both, realistically.
Yeah, Aldrin is like the theater kid that is kind of flailing all over the place. And Mara is the one who just walks out on stage, doesn't physically do anything, and commands the stage just with her presence.
Right.
But
Now,
gosh.
the couple things I wanted to point out on this one, I think it better for something that we'll have to kind of discuss later in other books. But Catabasis does kind of showcase what Mara's overall intentions are. Like these are her set of guidelines and laws that she has listed. This is what she is kind of hoping for and wants to push for as like an overall in a way. But we kind of find that later on she starts to, I guess in a lot of rights, she doesn't do it as quickly as some people would like, at least. Or she doesn't really believe in any of this at all, which is part of my problem when all is said and done with where I sit and I read this stuff again, and I'm like, I still have no idea like where Mara is coming from. So in chat, it's kind of been discussed that like Marasov is not an antagonist, and I do believe that. I would say that she's more of an anti-hero, if anything else. But she tries to spur her people on to make sure that she can have people that still do her will and her whims. And that's where, again, I don't really say that she is a antagonist or a protagonist at all.
I have a very different approach to how I feel Mara is, because Mara is constantly wanting to be, from the very first books or very first cards in this book when Brayfos, Mara was wanting to be outside of the conventional sense of what's going on. She wanted to get away. And once the distributary was created, she was basically put in this cage with everybody.
Yep.
And so, in my mind, that it is Mara trying to get out and trying to find. Yes, she's got immortality in the distributary. Yes, there's almost this utopian type existence going on, sans the whole civil war and everything with Shur trying to assassinate her. But Mara doesn't like to be tethered down by anyone. She wants freedom. And in some ways, she is in the ultimate little cage inside the distributary. So her working to get outside of the distributary doesn't seem out of character to me. Now, the fact that initially Mara wanted to go back and help, and I know this is getting into the Awoken of the Reef book a tiny bit. Mara wanted to go back and help the people of Earth, and Aldrin was the one that said no. Mara going back out might have something to also tie into that. There's no call out for it, but it may be Mara wanting to get out and see what's going on. For me, I still think it's one of those, she's getting out of this little cage that she's been put in. She's the pretty songbird in the cage at the moment, and she wants out.
Well, and in that regard, that's where I think that your thinking and my thinking are not that dissimilar. Her means of doing so, she still needs a people to help her. She cannot do anything on her own. So, however, she can manipulate and change, which is the overall ideas of how this entire book has gone so far. If she can do it, she'll do it. Now, all the same, she is at least telling them what they need to know. She is not doing it on the outset of saying, well, you guys will be able to follow me and it's completely fine. There won't be any problems, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden they get there and they're like, oh, by the way, you don't have immortality anymore. Just want to let you know that.
She's letting everybody know ahead of time.
Yes. But in that respect, it is still being something that's a little bit more sneaky, dirty, underhanded, I guess. I don't know. It's giving the people what they want, but still keeping the overall plan to herself. And
She's just making
in
the plan look really, really good to everybody by
which we
creating
still don't necessarily know what the plan is, as far as I'm concerned.
it. Long term, no.
No, I know that we know parts of it. Obviously, we certainly know stages because we have seen stages that have played out. We have physically seen some stages that have played out, but we still do not know what Mara's ultimate goal has been this entire time. That's at least what I will still argue to this point. Uh, but yeah, that's the biggest thing. Dino, you're asking the question that everybody has been asking me: the plan to fight against Savathun. No, that's another step. That is absolutely another step. There is an end goal that we still do not perceive because we do not have enough information, and I am very convinced about that per this point.
Oh,
There is
yeah.
stuff that we are missing that we do not understand nor know about yet that we can even peg as being the end goal for Mara Sov, and why her goals are still so incredibly veiled in secrecy and exactly how she wants it. As it is, if she had any hand in publishing this book called the Marasenna, she's not going to give us exactly what she wants. In addition,
Uh,
if she had any hand in what was going on with the Awoken of the Reef or the other portions, I would still say she's not going to give us any ideas. We have the objects that are there of like the bomb and sword logics and so on, that we'll of course get to, I think soon enough towards the end. Yeah.
yeah.
um that are very important for understanding all of that. But I think that again, her understanding of the sisters with Oryx, Zivu, and Savathun are a step to her ultimate thing. To otherwise think that she is only after Savathun and that is her end goal, I really think is kind of like low-minded to what she is after. And I say
I
that in the nicest way possible.
I have
Only
a
because there are more problems that we are going to see within the cosmos as a whole. Again, we do not see the whole picture that she does.
no.
We simply cannot know.
Nope, nope, nope. And I have a bit of theory as to how Mara works within those parameters, but that is totally for a different time. That is
Mhm.
not for this episode.
I'm gonna say there's a lot of little bits and theories that I think have protruded through with these books now that I'm done
Uh-huh.
with them.
So we're to the last arc, which is Nigh, which is
I got
to,
one more thing. I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay. No worries.
The only other big piece that I did want to call out to is that we actually do get an age for this system that we're in. The distributary is said to be about 12.1 billion years old. I want to take a poll. How old does everybody think Marasov is?
If you're not counting the fact that they don't age, she's 19, maybe 20.
I mean, I'm going with that, sure, but how old do you think she's been around? Or how long do you
Oh,
think she's been around?
long enough to cause multiple wars.
Hmm. If you had to put an age on it, and chat, you can certainly join in with this one, what would it be?
13,000.
That's higher than most that I've heard.
I mean, it depends on how long the distributary was open, or Mara was within the distributary, and then we have the fact that when Mara comes out, the start of the Reef Wars was not long after they get out, or at least we're assuming not long after they get out.
Hmm.
Because if they start to age, now who's to say they don't age slowly in comparison to what they used to? But Mara currently doesn't look like she's ancient in any way, shape, or form. But I don't know. It is an interesting thing to postulate. Do you have a guess?
Well, being that the distributary itself has been around for about 12.1 billion years, and
Mm.
being how time does pass within it, We would have to figure that it would have to be over a time period of that world settling to a point. And even then, we've seen hints and pieces like within uh, uh, heresiology that does suggest that the planet that they are on in the distributary isn't necessarily settled. So it still has some volcanic activity. It still has a lot of, and it seems like it's fairly nasty volcanic activity to that. Uh, we would have to figure that this planet would have to be at least about a couple billion years old in and of itself for them to be on it. And I'm still kind of wondering if Mara, due to her being the first, and due to her being within that the area of the distributary before everyone else and awakening before everybody else, if it isn't somewhere in the area of about a billion years old, because of the other pieces and what she kind of figures out, or where she kind of is along her path and understanding what she understood about the place that they were in. That doesn't come from just sitting back and not knowing more of like what's she would have. Let me say it differently. She was seeing more of the observable universe as what she could see it, and she grew up in that. She was also very akin and very open to being lonely to begin with, and she pretty well craved that example and that idea, because we see that throughout like the earlier entries within the book anyway. So I'm really actually leaning closer to like a much higher number. I've seen as little as 2,000, and I really think that's wrong. I've seen as little as like 5 to 600, and I'm sitting here going, no, that's entirely wrong. Maybe within like our years, but with the distributary years and everything like that, no, it's I want to say that it's somewhere upwards of about a billion.
It's hard to say at this point because it's a lot of speculation, but I would not put it past them to make her that old and be able to hone her skills that way.
Hmm.
And they've gone through 3 different queens during the time period. Now, granted, they're immortals, so it doesn't necessarily mean that lifetimes mean quite the same thing to them as it does to us.
I gotta say that's the problem. What is time to an immortal?
Right.
That's the biggest problem. So with having recorded times down, the first time that we really see much about time is really, I think, with Catabasis. We've got like one other entry that says like 50 years passed between here and here.
Mhm.
And then from there, we end up getting Catabasis where it's like it's 30 years now that Mara's been taking information, and then we find out that it's 12.1 billion years that the distributary's been aged. So those are the only that I can think of and remember major points in which they, that they kind of call out things about time. But that's the biggest thing. Like they claim it's been thousands of years for them within the distributary, and I really do think that that's at least showcasing or shouting out the ideas of most people have been around that long, but I've been around longer, so
Well,
meh.
there is one more call out as far
Yeah.
as age and years, and it is actually in the next card.
Yep.
Because Mara calls out, I have worked for many hundreds of years to arrange this outcome.
Hmm.
But, but she continues to go on. Unless, do you mind if we just go ahead and jump into the next card?
No, go ahead. I'm good now.
So Nye 1 is the meeting, the beginning of the meeting between Mara and Elise Lee, because Mara's getting ready to leave. She's made her speech to the people. She's gotten volunteers that are going to leave with her.
Hmm.
And she has one last order of business to accomplish before she goes and does that. And that is to go and talk to the first queen, Elise Lee. And she has a very specific reason to do that. And needless to say, it is kind of a bitter reunion. Not, I would say bittersweet, but there was really not a whole lot of sweetness between the two, beyond just the fact that they were civil for the most part. but there's a lot of coolness. You get another instance of the tea ceremony
Mm-hmm.
that we had way back in Brafos before the transformation happened. And we also get the fact that, besides some just petty talk of saying, the current queen won't endorse me, blah, 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 Queen is saying that she's going, or Elise Lee is going to say, is saying that Mara's going to make a lot of people unhappy. You make the lives of everyone in the world tangibly worse, not just those you've lured into certain death, but those who will grieve their departure, and all those who will come to grief for lack of labor and knowledge you took with you. So Mara is going with a lot of technology. This is the card where we get the callback to what Alice Lee, back in Brafos before the transformation, told her, that I had to consider the symbol people made out of me, and if that were good for them, I had to be that symbol for them. I had to perform as they required. I have done so. I have been the best thing I can think to be. So she's putting it back at Alice Lee that you're the one who basically told me that this is what I need to be because I was the symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alice does not take to that very nicely. She chips her teacup, because she slams it down enough to make Mara jump. And she says that I'm at least as clever as you. Do me the credit of acknowledging it. And then Mara goes on to say she's worked for hundreds of years to arrange this. And the final question-ish that Elise presents her is, did the Diastrum, the Theodicy War, did you arrange it all? Which leads us to Nigh 2.
And just to kind of call back on that one, I have worked for many hundreds of years to arrange this outcome, especially after the tangent that I went on. That doesn't mean that gives us any hint, unfortunately, about how old Mara is alive.
Age-wise, no.
Yeah, it just says that this is how long her works have been enforced.
Now, as far as her working towards that, she started working towards that pretty much right after Alice Lee came into existence within the distributary.
Right.
Because she started arranging the different things when it comes to the... God, why can I not remember the name of the 7 verdicts? There we go.
Mm-hmm.
So she did start working fairly quickly as soon as Alice Lee came into existence, as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
And then it takes us to Nigh 2, where Mara says, to answer the question of, did she arrange it all? Mara says no, which is a lie told with truth. And then the conversation goes on, and Elise Lee basically asks, how much would you sacrifice? Your mother, brother, aren't the Awoken real to you at all? And it gets pretty heated.
Pretty is an understatement.
Yeah.
Especially with the one line towards the bottom. I loved reading this.
The "you're the devil" line?
Uh-huh.
You're the devil. I remember in one of the old tongues, Mara means death. Oh, that's too perfect. That's too much. Yeah. Elise Lee does not like her. And
Nope.
especially considering the reason why she's so angry with her at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mara calls in for that boon. The boon that Elise Lee said that she would grant her when time came. Mara asks for forgiveness. Of all things, she wants forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And Elise Lee doesn't grant Mara forgiveness. She says, I'll support your fleet. I'll use every favor and connection I have to get your hulls completed and through the gateway. I will do so that I can hasten your departure from this world. I will do it out of hate for you. I will do it so that every good and great thing we achieve here ever after will be denied to you, you snake. No forgiveness. Do you understand me? It is unforgivable. Go. And she hurls the pitcher of Blackberry 2 over Mara and turns to go inside. And Mara is sticky and wet and having to leave, but she did what she meant to do to get out there. She didn't get any forgiveness out of it, but she at least laid her cards on the table somewhat with Elise Lee. Which, Blue, takes us to the card that you get to read.
Palagenesis 1. All right, so this is basically the conclusion, ultimately. So this is Palagenesis 1. And it starts and it says, Mara thinks of the banyan trees that sprawl across the shallow, silty lakes of a world she will never see again. The waveguides in her helmet detect the image and obey the encrypted command scheme she's rooted into every system in her fleet. She speaks into the Flight Directorate channel. Flight, sound off for final hold. Fido, go flight. Guidance, go flight. Inko, good constellation, go flight. Geode, go flight. Bio, go flight. As her flight controllers confirm the state of their technical domains, Mara looks out into space through the synthetic gaze of her sensorium. The hulls gleam in the stark blue-white light of the star, and each ship a silver sea pod braced by immense structural members and cocooned in reservoirs of spectrally adaptive smart fluid, theoretically enough to survive the horrible forces of transit through a singularity. Mara orders herself not to crane her neck, but she does it anyway, and gets a terrible cramp as she searches the sky for the distributary. There it is, the world of her rebirth, shining water blue and beautiful, wrapped like a gyroscope in its twin rings. World of laughing corsairs, world of breathless forest hunts, world of mountains flickering with pale chircona of fire, world of sweet berry-stained lips and mathematical insight pure as a rhodium chime. She will never see it again. Mara thinks of her mother. She doesn't want to, but she does, and the memory blindfolds her and muzzles hers and plugs her ears so she can hear nothing but Osana's voice on that final night. They're tipsy together, and the evening has wrapped around to morning. Now they sit side by side, mother and daughter, watching the sun rise over the Chisyed Range from Osana's little ranch house on the tundra. I'm not coming with you, Osana says. Mara has been so afraid of this answer for so long that she actually giggles. This can't be happening, of course. This is a nightmare, one of those stress dreams where your powers of persuasion and manipulation fail. Sure, Mom, she says. You got a ranch to run, after all. More? No, thank you. Osana squints into the dawn. Little age creases surround her eyes. Illegible encryption, unbroken despite Mara's centuries of effort. The rising light draws a tear. You'll have to send my goodbyes to Uldren. He's not speaking to me. What? Mara gasps as if this is the real shock and not losing her mother forever. Why? Because I already told him I wasn't coming with you. I'm happy here. Mom, Mara says with rising anger, I'm happy here too. That's not the point. A conversation that did not so much as end as beat itself into an unstainable emotional pulp hours later. No catharsis. No closure. Back in the present. Weapons, Uldren calls. Go flight. Go flight, Mara confirms. The clock is counting. L minus 5 minutes. Directly off her hull's bow, a sphere of ultra-dense mass awaits for the moment of implosion and collapse. There will only be moments to transit the wormhole before it evaporates. Flight sensor, Sure Ado calls. I have anonymous starfield occlusions bearing intercept, Mara shouts. They're missiles. It had to happen. Someone had to try to stop the departure. Someone good and Paladin pure who believes they are saving tens of thousands of Awoken from madness and doom. Flight, Fido, do we abort? Negative, Mara snaps. The countdown is go. Weapons, kill the inbounds. Sure Ito grunts in dismay. They're gonna get through, she says. 5 or 6 at least. Uldren. Mara opens their personal channel with a thought of his face. Reassign your guns to protect the gateway. We'll lose hulls, Mara. I know. Do it. Mara opens the command interface for the gateway and sends the image of a bloody thorn. The countdown skips instantly to 0. All ships, we are aborting directly to launch. Brace for acceleration. She issues the emergency launch order. The hull screams with thrust. Mara's suit floods with cushioning gel. She thinks of her mother's face, trying to fix it perfectly in her mind, and her sensorium tries vainly to open a channel to Asana. As the hull plunges into the singularity, the last thing Mara sees is the mournful error message. No connection. No connection. No connection. Cannot connect to Asana.
Such a sad card.
Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, yes, it's one of the cards that you kind of see the humanity of, and not like the mortality of Mara, like the realistic personification of her, like the bringing her down from the pedestal that a lot of people have put her on. She's not able to convince everyone. It's one of her greatest failings, I think, is not convincing her mother to come with her, I guess. But the other thing here, and this is something that we were talking about a little bit before the show started, the other thing of note here is this very ending. This very ending, you see someone, we don't know who. There's no acknowledgement as to who gave the order, but someone is trying a last-ditch effort to literally kill the Awoken who are planning to go through the singularity. And by doing so, this transitions into the Awoken of the Reef actually explains a lot. Because in the Awoken of the Reef, we see them come through. We see them on the other side. In Revanche is really where that comes through. And Revanche, similar to kind of how we've been talking about the different meanings of the names here, Palingenesis is really just kind of the concept of rebirth or recreation. Revanche is the process of retaking lost land. We talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the lore updates way back. And so there's this Palingenesis, the concept of rebirth, and this recreation of their race on our side, on the side of the mother universe or the mother system. And so you see right here, and you always have birth is always assigned with not only
messy.
creation, but exactly it's messy, it's violent in a way. And right here you kind of see an added layer of violence, because now not only do you have the violence of having to go through the singularity, they are literally going through under fire. And so when they come through in Revanche, you have an understanding of why they are so desperate, why they are kind of scattered where they come back through. Because technically speaking, if it had gone perfectly according to this plan, they would have come through and it would have been a much different story, right? You would not have had the Awoken of the Reef as they exist today, because the Awoken of the Reef that exist today are actually still rebuilding. They are rebuilding not only what they have lost, but they're also trying to find their way in a new world. And the thing here is that it just highlights the fact that even now, I think it highlights the fact that Mara and Uldren's paranoia, even now, is reaffirmed. You see here that someone, even at this point, even when they are at that very last step of the plan, or of this particular plan, someone tries to stab them in the back. Someone tries to prevent them. And I think that's important to remember from a character development standpoint, because this basically reaffirms the idea that secrets need to be there. They need to have a separation between what the people that they're dealing with and what they're actually doing. Because every time, it seems, especially every time they open up, something happens that actually does come back and slap them down. And that's kind of another kind of theme that has been kind of repetitive throughout. It's not as present and it's not as overt, but it does seem that every time Mara kind of stops being secretive, and not that she ever really stops, but every time she kind of is like, okay, this is what we're going to do, something like this does eventually happen. And I think that also kind of explains the degree of unhealthy obsession that Uldren and her have with secrets. I think is also kind of tied into this particular piece right here. Because this is the final goodbye, right?
Mhm.
This is the final goodbye to their people. These are people, and you also understand that ever since the Theodicy War, again, going back, we have our own triumph. Ever since the Theodicy War, there hasn't been Maltech fired. Well, now they have rockets being shot at them. It's just, again, that kind of, it's a bittersweet ending to this departure from paradise, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's kind of a coming of age
Mm-hmm.
ending to this whole story, or at least to this portion of the story. Which leads us to the closure of this book, which is tied into the Palagenesis. And it is kind of like the beginning of the book, with when Mara gave us the Arquiliqui and the introduction to the whole thing. This is also likely Mara herself penning this. It caused quite a stir within the lore community, let's just say that. And I'm sure we'll talk about it at least a little bit. And the bomb method at the end.
Mhm.
So here is Palingenesis 2. Here in this time without time, pocketed by ever-scattering cosm, touched as an assassin touches the gun in the secret fold, there is an eon within, and I am going without. This is where we belong. Interstitial, in that space between. This is where truth collapses, supercritical. There is a war, and its name is existence. There are two ways to fight. One is the sword, and one is the bomb. By the sword, I mean the way to fight that is tempered and solid, the way that is made from old things, and that triumphs by the reduction to simplicity. This way is known to those who study the cosmos. Take any part of it at any time, and you'll see an edge and say, this is a weapon. By the bomb, I mean that way of being that is complex and schematic and must attain a critically to attack. The way that is made from new things and that triumphs by the arrangement of intricacy. This way is known to those who study themselves. Take any component of the bomb in isolation, and you will say, what is this? I cannot understand its purpose. Yet it is in the possibility of a fire. Numberless are the spaces that surround the universe. Subordinate and the superordinate are their relationships to the intrinsic world that is only itself. We pass now through analogy space that will reify what was once subject into object. That power I held, which was which was agonist to a mother's reapproachment and will be realized and reified. First is the awareness of my vector, which all who follow me held in their hearts. Second is the desire to hear my speech, which all who follow me curled in their ears. Third is the existence at the fault, which is the inner tension that all who follow me still sense. We are risen from man and fallen from heaven. We are made again in the fall. What was once us will not ever be us again, or ever again be us. I am the uncrowned ever queen, and my only diadem will be the event horizon of the universe, which is my dominion. By falling, I will arise. There are an uncountable number of ways between 0 and 2. When I was reading that the first time, I may have had to stop more times for this one card than any other time because of a lot of these words. Just
Well,
FYI.
It is written in Mara's speech, which we all know is not exactly the most straightforward thing in the world.
No, it's not. What's interesting though is like the the concept of the bomb.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that she calls it is a study unto themselves, like to study yourself, to know thyself. I don't know. I kind of want to hear your guys's
It makes me
thoughts
tingly
on this.
inside.
It makes you tingly inside. That is
Oh my
awkward...
god! Like it's like the biggest philosophical nod we've seen so far. Know yourself. Right. It's the Oracle of Delphi. Like it's just to be honest. Like it's going back to the entire obsession with secrets and and you know the whole nod to complexity. Whereas, and this is also kind of, you can see this a bit in a parallel to Toland, right? In what is it, Ghost Fragment Darkness, where Toland is trying to explain the. Oh, hang on, real quick, guys.
Yeah, Blue's a little robot for a second. Yeah, we can still understand you though.
Give me 1 second. Let me try to reconnect. Is that better?
Reconnecting, reconfiguring. Of course, I don't think chat can hear us while this is going on.
Yeah, no, they can, because I can.
Okay.
I have it piped through. I don't have any audio issues, so it sounds like something that might. Oh, yep, there it goes again.
Okay, you're still
out, but it's not too bad if that's the case.
Yeah, if it's not too bad and the chat doesn't hear robot, then I say go for it.
Yeah,
okay.
Blue doesn't.
Sorry.
That means the source is good, but
the source, yeah, it's Discord is given some wonky ping issue. I can hear you guys fine, so chat can hear you guys fine, and that's really my big thing. But what I was meaning by that is it's a connection back to the Orphic or the Delphi Oracle and Socrates, right? It's the whole know yourself. I mean, Sun Tzu you pick a philosopher, and this is a huge proponent of the basis of any victory. You know, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, just any culture, any philosopher, anything, they all have this as a core component of know yourself. Because if you know yourself, you know what you're fully capable of. And, and that's just, the full truth, like be honest with yourself. Here with the logic of the bomb, or, bomb logic, whatever you want to call it. I know that triggers some people. I don't really understand why, but it is what it is. But here you see that Mara is not only acknowledging, and exactly, Wicked just said this in chat. Here, the point of the bomb, the logic of the bomb, is that you not only know your strengths, but you know your weaknesses. You know what to shore up against. You know what to prepare to defend, to rally when you really need to. And that is the pinnacle of knowledge if you're going to do something as complex as what is being done within her story. Because if you are not aware of your weaknesses, if you are not fully and bluntly honest with your own shortcomings, you're not going to be able to overcome them. You're not going to be able to have the resources present in the form of in the form of Uldren, in the form of Petra, in the form of the Awoken in general. You're not going to know that if you don't know yourself. And that's where you kind of see this this kind of display of toying with other people, because she is so self-aware in a way that she is comfortable with what she is trying to do. She understands what she's trying to do. She understands where she stands, and so she knows how to accommodate for those shortcomings on her own behalf. You see that within the Marasenna. You see that within the Awoken of the Reef. She is blunt with herself. We kind of talked about that in part A. She doesn't pull punches about herself, even when she's talking about that. Right. And so, and yeah, Wicked again is, the the military philosophy of know your enemy. You love them as you would yourself until you become one and the same, and then all of a sudden it's easy to defeat them. Like, because
the other side of that equation is that Mara versus, if we're going to take the sword logic versus the bomb logic and the hive versus the awoken, Mara knows how to utilize those around her.
Exactly. And the
versus
thing,
Oryx, who is a solo.
well, there's and then that, I mean, that ties into the whole allocentro versus and egocentro argument as well. Even the Awoken, which you could argue is even more egocentrical than the Guardians, they are still allocentric in the sense that Mara is able to utilize people, whereas Oryx and the very strict hierarchy of the Hive, they use people, but they don't inspire loyalty in those people. It's the whole Machiavellian thing, you know. It's do you be feared or you loved? Mara is kind of a combination of the both, whereas Oryx has definitely gone the Machiavelli route and just gone, you know, you will fear me. But the other thing here too is you see a really good definition of what Mara is arguing is at the basis of the war for existence. We already have had Toland. We've already seen that argument. And now you have a new player on the scene, a new pair of eyes on the scene. And so there's a different theory here. And that's the other thing to keep in mind with this particular thing is this is kind of, you know, a philosophical debate on the rules of existence from a creature who has kind of had a different experience than the rest of the people who have weighed in on this debate so far. So take that into mind as well. And again, I don't understand why people get so bent out of shape about the bomb logic thing. I mean, it's just another paradigm to be introduced, to be evaluated.
It's just we've had sword logic as kind of the predominant method for so long that I think the introduction of the bomb logic just kind of threw everybody that there is another way.
I mean,
but why would
that there would be a different way?
Yeah, I was about to say sorry, Beard, just real quick. The only reason we've had sword logic so predominantly is because the Hive have been predominant.
Right, but the other thing is, like, how many times have we, as a Focus Fire Chat crew, debated the aspect of Guardians using somewhat of a sword logic? I know it's not the exact same thing, but we've used to debate that fairly often. That's we ourselves use sword logic to accomplish our goals.
Oh yeah, and again, I would go back to argue that was within the paradigm that we had present to us. Now we have a new facet to allow more further exploration of the demeanor of what we're doing, or the underlying, you know, ethos, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, of what we're doing. And it's just, you know, I don't know. To me, it makes a lot of sense because this is one of the things that I was arguing when we had the sword logic is that, and I remember I actually had a similar conversation to what she's explaining here with Damo, way back when we read that first card, because one of the first things we asked was, it was like, okay, but ultimately what happens in the presentation that we get of sword logic, there's only two options: survive or die. Well, there's actually a third option, and it's called coexistence, and that is in reality something that is viable. Now, you can argue all you want that evolution technically creates its own thing, but there is a limit to the logic of the sword that is not addressed in that logic. This presents a new, you know, whether you want to call it logic, whether you want to call it a way of you know, differing from the sword logic, however you want to call it. I don't really care. It's a different paradigm is what it is. And it's basically saying that there is another way to see the world and to interact with it. And that's 100% legit. Like, that every person is allowed to have their own paradigm. And you know, Go out on the street in the real world and ask someone about the purpose of life, and you're going to get a different answer for every single person you ask. It's just the way it is. Sorry, Beard. What was that? What were you going to say?
Well, I've got something else on that angle, but I wanted to actually bring up Tyrannicide real quick, so give me a moment. For those not familiar, it's another in the next book within this series is the Awoken of the Wreath. And from here, we start to see some other stuff that goes on with Mara. I almost feel like it's worthwhile kind of bringing this up only because it ties back into the ideas of the sword and the bomb logic pretty well. In the card Tyrannicide 1, Mara talks about a few things that kind of happen, like other players that happen before her death and around. She also talks about Route 81, which I had to sit and think about for a second and go, a dooey. Anyway, she also talks, though, that that she dreamt of sword and bomb. I'm going to actually read some of this stuff because I think it's worthwhile. I dreamt of sword and bomb. I dreamt of the self-honing blade that has cut itself so fine it pierces the world and thus becomes the world. It is self-honing because it constantly whets itself against itself. I dreamt of death bearing this blade, or of something so closely allied with death as to be its synonym, so that to separate them would require a knife sharper than sharpness. Death raised up that blade, and I said, I cut all, and all I cut, I ate. Then death cut the bomb, and the bomb was broken and could not fire. I was in the bomb. I knew what death was, that death was the cut verb, and that its only verb was to cut. Shapes and gliders. I dreamt of existence as a game of cellular automata. In this metaphor, there were only two things: shapes in the game world and the rules of the game world. The rules were the rules of life and death. I understood that the sword was the desire to escape existence as a shape in the game and to become the rule that made the shapes. This rule said only live or die. It had it had no other outputs. It could not keep secrets. Against it was the desire to become a shape so complex that it could within itself play other games. And a little bit more. What will soon be? I dreamt that the sword that was death and rule sought out complexity and cut it to reveal the simplicity within. I knew that soon we would be cut, for we were complex and full of secrets. I knew that it was coming. I knew that the stroke would fall and that I had to stop it. How can a bomb make use of a sword? How can the rule that separates life from death be killed? And what I wanted to bring this up for the most part, really comes back to this idea that even sword logic in and of itself is not necessarily a logic or much else. It is simply a thing that, as we've also seen, even within the Books of Sorrow, and even I believe Oryx has said so as well. It's rules of cosmos. The ideas of the bomb are basically just simplifying things into the ideas of this is what the light is, versus the sword, where it's more so this is what the rule of the cosmos, or the trying sword, or the trying way, or seeing if you outlive your son is all about. Meanwhile, the ideas and complexity of a bomb goes with the ideas of working with others, and goes with the ideas of expanding your technology, or expanding your will, or expanding others to work with each other, more than it is in terms of going out and forcibly taking or forcibly killing off all that does not survive what it is that you're doing to it. It's another legitimized idea of light versus dark, and I kind of hate that they almost instituted this idea of bomb logic the way that they did, because it really did kind of simplify it a little bit more. but it was already hanging there. This is nothing new whatsoever. So to me, that's why I kind of looked at it and was like, well, it's a good little analogy, but sword logic was always a good little analogy as well for like how things would have worked against a sword. Either you're cut by the sword or you're not. Either you die by the sword or you don't. And these are that's the basic simple possibilities and why they showcase the way they do within this card. The ideas of like the automata. There were only two rules: either live or die. So again, you either live or you die by the sword. But the bomb is a complex piece, and that's what the light has always kind of been about. But a bomb still has the ability to kill. And that is ultimately, I think, what it comes down to. We see these, but again, they're just kind of like analogies more than anything else. But that's the biggest thing that I think I wanted to pop up there. Just to kind of expand on that notion a little bit more, because I don't think they round out the ideas fully within Palingenesis, within what the sword and bomb logic kind of are. And there's a few other entries that really build into it. But I hope that helps the understanding a little more. I hope you guys understand why I wanted to bring that up, because I think it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Blue, you had said the other thing was coexistence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can take your Vex trickery out of here. I don't need the okay?
Look, if we're all the same, we all survive. Okay, that's all that matters, right?
Basically, I'm gonna say what will is there if no will exists?
Exactly. It's logical.
Yeah.
Come
totally.
on, Exo.
It's completely
Come on,
logical.
come on, Exo. Let's go.
Look, I can completely understand where you're coming from with that. That doesn't mean I have to like it. But that's the ideas behind Destiny as a whole. I've said it many a time, I think, at this point. Destiny is a war of philosophy and a war of different ideologies that exist. It really isn't a war of people. It's now turning into something that's a little bit more like, well, this is cosmic law fighting, or the will to live is fighting against cosmic law. So how does cosmic law bend, or does it at all, towards the will of those that want to live within it? Just as our situation is here on Earth, we are a people that want to break free of our sphere at one point, or at least I would assume so. But in that regard, how would the cosmos deal with us or allow for us to do so? It's what Carl Sagan had talked about for years before his death. It's what many astrophysicists also think about as they kind of go about their day-to-day lives. And the concepts here that we're seeing with sword bomb and convergence are far from uncommon. They really are basics in philosophy. It's just a matter that they've dressed them up in a very nice theatrical way. So it's fitting that we've got, Oryx and Mara to be at the heads of both of those.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that sums up why I don't. I mean, like Beard had said, I don't see this as any. I see this as just legitimately acknowledging something that was really already there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't. I mean, that's why that's where my line of like I'm not really sure why everyone got upset about this, or well, some people got upset about this.
Some got upset. Some were very happy that there was like a
finally
means
nod,
to kind of understand
a nod to
like
well,
what was
it's
going on.
Right.
I like that.
I do. I mean, and that's me as well. It was like, hey, look, it's a competing paradigm, and like Beard, I 100% agree with you. I think that's a clarification on what Destiny is really kind of going for from a story standpoint, is that it is a conflict of ideas. It's that's what I mean. Ultimately, isn't that what every war is about? Oh, Green, yeah. Do you want to you want to kind of tie that up with the final comments? I guess. Do you want to use that as the?
Yeah. Yeah, we totally can. Do you want to start final comments? Is that where we're at now?
Yeah, unless Green, you or Beard have anything else, that's.
I mean,
I'm gonna say
I mean,
Green,
like I have tons that I could still go off of.
yeah, it's just it's such a thick text, both
Well,
in size and the density of what's in it.
and that should give credence to like how the Bungie writers have been throughout most of this. Now that I am, as I've said before, now 5 entries away from being done with every entry that Destiny, the Forsaken at this point now has to offer,
Mm-hmm.
or really that Destiny as a whole has to offer. There is a big difference between a writing team at Bungie that is stifled and one that is allowed to do what they will. And there is definitely a very different tangible feel when you start to see that. We start to get these kind of thoughts and how everything kind of moves and how people interpret things. But I did want to ask real quick, Green, because I feel like I rolled in and I stole everything that might have been there. Was there anything you wanted to add on to like the sword and bomb stuff a little bit more? Because I'm just curious on your thoughts on it, like why I guess people were upset about it or not upset, or I don't know.
I think it was just the introduction of a new logic in their minds. That
Right.
was really the big thing that I saw in multiple chats, not just Focus Fire chat, but also even in some chats that aren't lore based. People
Yep.
got kind of up in arms about it, not in a negative way, but just really latched onto the concept. Now, there's a fairly decent reason why we have a new logic, and I think that kind of goes into my shout out slash thing I posted in chat for the guys to see a second ago. A few minutes ago, one of the Bungie writers, Malazi, at Malozy, she tweeted out that Seth Dickinson has a new book out, and
Mm-hmm.
her tweet was essentially saying, "Hey, Destiny fans, Seth wrote the Books of Sorrow, the Marasenna, and the Forsaken Prince. Many of you really like to read his work. Consider supporting his new book." And it has a link to his new book on Amazon. But now we have confirmation on who wrote this and why it's so similar in some respects to the Books of Sorrow. And considering what we did 3 episodes on the Books of Sorrow when we did it years
Yeah.
ago at this
Yeah.
point. And now we've done 2 episodes on this, and that could have very easily have been 3. I mean, it's apparent that it's Seth writing this, and Seth has a very particular style in his storytelling, and we're seeing it for sure. So if you are so inclined to go and support Seth's new work, definitely look up Malazee. It's at Mallozee. It's her tweet, and it'll give you a link to his tweet, which is sending you to there. If you follow Seth, just go find it from Seth's page. It's a lot easier. But I just saw this pop on my feed just now, and that will be my shout out for the evening.
I gotta say it makes a lot of sense that Seth would have been the one to write those 3, because all three of them are. I mean, obviously, like Books of Sorrow was for many of us, I think, our first introduction to how Seth writes, but the Marasenna and Forsaken Prince very much aired towards how Seth wrote, and it felt like the Books of Sorrow all over again. But
it did.
Yeah, that explains kind of why. I guess we're on chat
outing.
now. I don't have too much since Friday at this point, so I'm kind of in the same boat. Just pretty cool that everything was kind of going. I like the fact that we split this up. I'm also glad that I know we didn't hit our 2-hour timetable here, but that's fine. But it, I think, helped, and I hope that all of you guys kind of agree too, that by splitting this book up, it helps to understand it a little better, and then to also kind of get your brain working into some of the next stuff that we have to still look into and cover. Because as Bungie is very good at doing, and what the writers are very good at doing, they're very good at presenting something and then making you think about it further by presenting more questions. Because with just this little tirade we've had here with like bomb and sword logic being in comparison, that could be a show in and of itself, realistically.
It's an option.
Oh, it's certainly an option. But those are like we're still in the outset of kind of realizing some of this stuff, but I'm seeing chat over here kind of firing off, and I'm still having to sit back and go, yes, but all of this already existed. There is no ethos, there is no mythos, there is no religion. It is simply what you guide by and what you think on. But that is where you have to sit back and start to take in your own thoughts and your own philosophies of what kind of stuff has been written. Because as I have constantly been reminded of by myself as I've read over these books now, there are so many little bits and pieces that they have taken from other areas of either literature, writing, or otherwise. And I guess that's where my entire roundabout shout out is going here. With finally getting the time to sit down and read all of it, and being forced to go into book 6 now that I have handwritten, I am continuously blown away by what a open and able to do what they want to writing team Bungie has in comparison to what I have read or sat through in a lot of other games. So to the Bungie writers, to Z, to Jill, who I get a chance to talk to every now and again, to Seth, and to all of the others whom I'm trying to remember your names as best I can. Y'all do great work. Y'all make me think. I always have to like go back and check into other philosophies or other ideas that I never knew of previously. And you guys have been educated enough to understand this stuff way before I could, or you had to do the same kind of backtracking and then break down like what a thing actually is, etc. So to be the deconstructionist that I am, the Anwar that I am, thank you very much for all that you do.
New nickname achieved. No, I mean, again, I'm kind of gonna just basically echo both of you on that. It's just been, it's nice to have the refresh of information to delve through, and especially, kind of echoing Beard's statement here, especially when that new information has the depth and the breadth. Really, it's not just deep information; it's also a lot of information. So again, you see that a lot throughout this particular lore community. Some of us have been kind of slow in getting Forsaken analysis out. And we said this at the beginning of Forsaken, and we're going to say it again. It's not because we aren't working on it. It's because there is so much to go through. We want to make sure that we understand exactly, our thoughts, our responses are accurate and all that. So there's that, and we just, again, huge shout out to you guys as consumers of the content that we create in the patience. I think that's a big thing too that I'm always blown away with. But yeah, that's really it.
My community, when I haven't posted a new video about lore in the last month and a half.
Beard, don't worry. I'm going on 3 years and not posting a new video, and everyone still listens to me ramble. So it's okay. Right? Doesn't that work? Isn't that how that works? No, anyways. No, and I mean, but again, I think it's a testament to the patience of the particular community, right? I think it's a testament to the people who want to make sure our understanding that we want to make sure that the information that we provide is somewhat accurate, and we have our opinions, obviously, and that's what Beard has been saying too. So just a big shout out to you guys again. Thank you so much for your patience. But if that's all, I'm gonna say we wrap this up, and we will see you guys not in a full week, but soon after. And then, so next time we are on stream, we will be talking about the extra lore content for October. and that will be over Bloodborne, which I am desperately trying to wrap my head around. So if I suddenly go insane in chat, that is why. But you guys have a great week. It's been a rocky start for those of us that I've talked to. Hope it gets better for everyone else. I will be getting this episode out. Excuse me. I'll be getting this episode out as soon as possible for everyone. But yeah, hope whenever he gets this to you, you guys are having a great week. Talk to you guys next.
But before you go to,
Yes.
just remember, this is the end of Side B.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. I'm going to clip that and keep it. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to our episode archives can be found at www.focusfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all of our amazing partner podcasts within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright. Oh my god, the inner eyes. Such a creepy concept.
Okay, I'm going to bed because I have to be up in like 5 hours, and I know you guys are going to be.
Yeah,
heading off.
I actually have to take off as well because I got to flip over chat and set up for everything next week. So, because we have extra lore and the just keep lining your brains with more eyes. It's that, oh my god, the school is so creepy. It's, yeah, insight is eyes on the inside. Nice.
Gross.
Oh yeah, Bloodborne. Oh, don't, you just wait. Bloodborne is all about insight. It's all about seeing.
Good night, Green.
Night
Green. On that, sweet dreams, Green.
No, stop that. Yeah, like I've gone. Yeah, the bits I've gone through on Bloodborne have
it's
not
basically
exactly been the most straightforward thing.
Oh
in the
god,
world,
no!
but
It's
it's
finally
extraordinarily Lovecraftian.
Oh, that's what I was just about to say. It is
but...
Lovecraft on fucking steroids, is what it is. It's I even like there's a point where I was sitting there, and I think it was the ancient race of the plant, the Phthumians, I think is. Hang on, let me pull it up. I think it's Phthumians, I think is what they're called. But it's like I was reading it and I'm like, this is like straight out of Lovecraft. Pthumerians. And yeah, even like the wiki that I was looking at, even they were like, yeah, this is pretty much from the mound. And it's like, which I'm like, I'm gonna have to put like so many explicit warnings on the episode, because it's like once you start down that thread, it gets dark fast.
Well, I'm gonna say not only dark, but a little NSFW besides.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah. I mean,
fun
the
stuff at all.
Kaninyan are not the easiest ones to talk about. I mean, for God's sakes, they worshipped Cthulhu. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's no fun whatsoever.
But all right, guys,
so
stream.
Do you want to? Before you go, do you want to know my next, my first topic back? Actually,
ghost stories, pulled pork.
No.
Okay, is it
the ghost stories?
Is it the ghost's last word?
No.
God damn it.
No. It actually revolves around a group that I've, for whatever reason, been very interested in, and I feel like knowing more about them is helpful to the timeline in some regards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the 6 Coyotes, because I think
Oh
we know every
yeah,
single
hey.
member.
What is that? That's Who Protects the Ghost?
Yep, I guess.
Micah.
I gotta say, yeah,
Who's
Micah
a
10
fucking
or Mika
badass.
10, I
Mika
think
10,
actually.
yeah.
I think it's Mika,
like
not Micah.
who's single-handedly almost responsible for a lot of the Guardians of Renown that we know of. Like
I gotta say,
it's
just shouting that off, like the idea of here's Andal Brask, and I'm just like, really?
well,
Yeah, it's
Andal
Protector of
Brask,
Ghosts. That's it.
Andal Brask, and then the one of the new entries with I don't know if it was Shinobu, but it basically is Shinobu's coyotes.
Hmm.
They're on the wall, and I think it's the
Yep.
EXO or something. Like, well, where did you come from? Oh, Micah sent me. And they're like, I'm like, oh my god, like Micah just like finds people, which makes sense.
Yeah, I have this feeling that I have this feeling that Tallulah is one of the original 6.
I get the feel.
But
I
then we
think
get
Micah might have been one of the original 6 too.
I think so. I think she still is an active member, but she's like the off-site leader. Meanwhile, the others that are there, like Theron, Lee, Nadia, and Shinobu, are your main ones. And there's another name as well that I can't remember off the top of my head, but there are 7 names that it sounds like we've seen with the 6 Coyotes. And I have a feeling that like Tallulah is kind of like the honorary member, as being
Which
one
would
that
make
was there
sense.
previously. Yeah,
I just
and it
I
almost
love Protection of Ghosts or Protector of Ghosts. The
Protector,
sign
it's
off,
so good.
the sign off is
Yeah.
like, and you know, as they always say, better you than me. Bye. It's like-
That's what makes me think that Mika and Tallulah have some kind of heavy relation between each other.
oh yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's because Tallulah wasn't on the 6 at one point, and then Vanguard duty became a thing.
Well, because isn't Mika the one that's with Tallulah when Tallulah dies?
No, there's a
Or is that another?
who was it? I know where you're thinking of here. I cannot remember
It
off
was
top
the
of my head, though.
the gambling one.
Yeah, and it's
God damn it! I have it in my notes.
I can't remember if it's in the Great Hunt stuff or
It is.
where
It's
it was.
Great Hunt.
Yeah,
It's Great Hunt.
I'll find it here. You will. One of the two.
Caliban.
That's right.
Caliban's the one that's with Tallulah when she loses to the Ahamkara
Yeah.
and gets
Which
knocked down.
ironically, aren't we named Mission Caliban or something like that?
Yeah,
during the game at one point.
Yeah, there's something. There's a nod to Caliban a couple.
Yeah.
I think a couple times actually. Yeah,
Mhm.
Tallulah does go out like a badass. Because
Yeah, she does.
she's getting eaten. She's like, I don't scream. I was like,
Yep.
what the fuck?
Yeah, she's something else. That's for darn sure. And the
All
other
right.
one I got to cover at one point is letters. Anyway,
Oh
I'll let you go.
Yeah. What's the 9 Guardian? Oh, that's right. Caliban was the 9 Guardians that fell in Savathun's song. That was the fire team Caliban, I think, because that was with Takeo 3 Rip.
Yeah, but I thought we were called Caliban.
Were we Caliban or were they Caliban? I can't remember.
Let me check the transcript if
Yeah, okay. Dino says that we were.
Yeah, they don't have a transcript of it. I'm sure I've got like
I was about to say,
a
do
bunch
we
of
have
different
a?
things in my.
Ow.
Doesn't look like it actually. I've probably got it in all my footage of that strike because let me tell you, it comes up often.
Ah, no,
But
it
I'm like,
does.
I'm like 99% sure that we're called Caliban, and the I don't know if they ended
Operation
up-
Caliban.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're called Operation Caliban. Sloan starts off Operation Caliban. Welcome to the show. Got several fire teams missing beneath the arcology. We got one report a few hours back. Blah blah blah. And then the alternative is Zavala, or I think whatever is Zavala says. This is a priority rescue mission designated ID Operation Caliban.
Yep. Makes you wonder if
It makes you
Caliban
wonder.
was.
I was about to say, yeah, it makes you wonder where the connection there is existing. Was Caliban someone that was sent in after after people to rescue them?
Yeah, I was gonna say I wanted to say that. I wonder if Caliban ran in after.
Saladin fighting a dragon. Why
Yeah,
did you want
I
to
love
fight
that
a
bit.
dragon? Why not?
I was gonna say the actual apt question is why wouldn't you want to
Dude.
fight a dragon? Fuzro da. Moving on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, Golida's Hamkara is really fun.
Yeah.
The Guardians in the raid lore. Let me think. We have Nadia and Shinobu. They're both gone. Ephrodite is not, but Saladin is. Pradith, Kabir, and Pahanin are all gone. Well, technically, Pradith is still somewhat around.
What do you
Lufang.
mean Saladin's gone?
Or sorry, Saladin's not gone. I was thinking,
You were thinking Radagast?
yeah. God, I don't even know where that. Anyways,
It's fine.
so yeah, Ephrodite and Saladin are still around. Pradith is technically still around. Kabir
You
is
also have
not.
Zavala.
I mean, technically, I guess you could argue Kabir is somewhat theoretically still around.
right.
Eris is still around.
Weining's gone.
Caliban. Yeah, Weining's rip.
Yep.
Wait, which one was Weining? Weining was
Weining was actually with Eris, I believe.
no, that was
No.
Ikora was with Eris, I thought.
Yeah, I can't remember where Weining
'Cause that was the one-
or who she was with. 'Cause she was the one that kept.
Eris was there was one with Weining and Eris, and then Eris was like in 3. But the one with Weining was the one where she kept punching the thing, and it like she basically was baiting them.
Yeah.
And then like they're like, "What are you making a wish for? That the fight never ends." They're like, "Oh my
And Eris
God.
is just like, "We don't want this. What are you doing?" And Weining's like, "No, this is exactly what we want."
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, no, that's still one of my favorites.
What do you mean?
Zavala lost Cade. They did, but it was like that's the thing that I think we're trying to figure out real quick is like how many of them were in a fight with an Ahamkara and now are dead. But I don't think the numbers necessarily added up.
I don't think they technically, because I mean, Jolin
No.
and Petra were technically in supremacy, but that's not got anything to do with Ahamkara.
Yeah.
I still think I still am blown away by the monolith bleed connection that I found.
I was
like, wait, hang on, wait a minute.
You have no idea how much that bothers the absolute mother-loving shit out of me.
I was like, are you fucking shitting me? And the funny thing is that's one of the items that has always bugged me because it never connected to anything. And all of a sudden,
it never
I'm
made
like,
sense for like anything Hive related whatsoever.
Well, and it's
and
like,
then all
okay,
of a
like
sudden,
monolith.
here it is, and it's still not related.
I'm like, the monolith. Like, are we talking like First Contact monolith? Are we talking Dead Space What are we talking about? Oh my god!
Are we talking Drifter going to friggin' Tal Volantis
yeah.
and bringing something back?
Oh my god.
Oh, I still can't wait to talk about that one.
The
I feel like the intro to that video is going to be to the effect of, here on this planet 2,000 years ago. Wait a minute. You mean this isn't the opening to Dead Space 3?
Or it's the fuck, what are they? The force negators that Thrawn has.
Oh, get out.
No, that's what they are. I mean, really, that is what they are. What is it? It's the pet. What the fuck? Yaselnir.
Yes.
With their
I was trying to think of them too.
With their fucking trees that you can't get them out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still really
I swear
unsure.
to God, as soon as they started talking about that, that's the first thing that popped in my head. I was like, I swear to God, if you describe them as a cat, I'm done. Like, if they, because what were they? Four-legged cats, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
Or,
Yeah, furry tree dwellers.
Yeah, I can't remember if they were 4 or 6-legged though. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, did you see Jake's, speaking maids, talking about the Tiger Man? Did you see Jake's like tweet about why Shax won't take his helmet off? It's because his headcanon says that it's because Shax is the Tiger Man. That's why he won't take his helmet off. I'm like, you know what? You know what? They could totally pull that off, actually.
All right. Sure.
Where was it? I've got it. I've just sent it to you.
I still say that means that Shax is an awoken.
I go back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Shaq's face is too beautiful to be seen. All right, Fabio, calm the hell down.
Oh my God, Jake put up the body pillow of the captain. Yes. Yes. All right, guys.
Oh, yep. It's time for bed.
Everyone have a great night, and we will see you on Friday. Unless I somehow manage to get time between then and figure out a way to stream. But probably not. So, anyways, have a great night. Talk to you later.
Hi.